The smoke of battle has long since lifted, but the echoes of the American Civil War still drift through the fields, forests, and forgotten towns of a nation forever changed. Beneath the familiar headlines of history lie enduring mysteries, secrets buried in crumbling forts, lost letters that may never be found, and the untold fates of men and women who vanished into the chaos. What truly happened on those fog-laden battlefields? Were there covert operations that altered the course of entire campaigns? How many relics, gold, vital documents, perhaps even entire regiments, disappeared without explanation? From haunted battlefields where the wind seems to carry the softest sighs of long-departed soldiers, to puzzling disappearances that still leave historians scratching their heads, the Civil War is more than just a story of strategy and sacrifice. It is a labyrinth of unanswered questions. In the shadows of history, the truth remains, elusive, compelling, and waiting to be uncovered. So sit back, relax, and join us as we delve into the enigmas of a war that shaped a nation yet still guards its secrets. The lost Confederate gold. Amid the rolling hills and dense woods of the American South lies a legend, one whispered in hushed tones across generations. It's a tale that has captivated treasure hunters, historians, and curious minds for over a century. The mystery of the lost Confederate gold. The tale of the lost Confederate gold. Imagine a heavy, iron-bound chest, its surface dulled by time, resting somewhere beneath layers of soil, hidden from sight, perhaps never to be found. The very idea evokes a sense of both wonder and melancholy, a relic of a past steeped in conflict and desperation. In the waning months of the Civil War, as Union forces pressed relentlessly into Confederate territory, reports emerged of gold and other valuables being moved hastily, often under cover of night. Rail cars and wagons transported what some records suggest were millions of dollars in gold meant to sustain the Confederate war effort. But as the Confederacy crumbled, these treasures vanished, leaving behind tantalizing fragments of truth. Some say the gold was loaded onto trains that were intercepted or mysteriously rerouted. Others suggest it was buried in secret locations far from the reach of invading armies, concealed by those who hoped to preserve what remained of their shattered nation. The mystery deepens when one examines the documentation or lack thereof. Official Confederate records are frustratingly incomplete, and many surviving accounts contradict one another. Some historians point to specific shipments meticulously recorded in dispatches, yet these shipments seemingly disappear without trace. Local folklore fills the gaps with vivid imagery, carts disappearing into dense forests, moonlit rivers hiding chests of glittering gold beneath their waters, or secret tunnels leading to hidden chambers beneath small southern towns. Yet tangible evidence remains elusive. Geography itself seems to guard these secrets. The Appalachian foothills, with their twisting ravines and isolated hollows, would have provided ample cover for clandestine operations. The swamps of Georgia and the forests of Alabama could easily swallow a wagon and its precious cargo, leaving only whispers in the wind. Could it be that some of the Confederate gold still lies undisturbed, waiting to be discovered, perhaps in a place where even modern technology has yet to penetrate? Speculation does not stop there. Over the decades, treasure hunters and amateur historians have followed leads that ranged from meticulously mapped routes to cryptic oral traditions passed down through generations. Some swore they saw markings on trees or stone left as silent guides by desperate Confederate couriers. Others reported finding fragments of old railroad ties or remnants of warehouses, hinting at the hurried operations that moved gold across state lines. But each promising trail seems to fade, leaving more questions than answers. Even the most carefully documented theories leave room for uncertainty. Was the gold truly centralized in one location? Or was it dispersed in smaller caches to reduce the risk of capture? Did some of it cross borders, moving into neighboring states, or even into the hands of private citizens, never to be reclaimed? Historical investigations have unearthed scattered pieces of the puzzle: coins, bullion, and handwritten ledgers. But these relics only confirm what has long been suspected, that the gold's final resting place remains unknown. The allure of the lost Confederate gold is not merely in its value, but in the human stories entwined with it. Couriers racing through the night, officials making desperate decisions under pressure, communities complicit in secrecy. All of them left marks on history, some recorded, some forever invisible. And as the decades pass, the line between verified fact and local legend blurs. Is the gold truly lost, or is it merely hidden, waiting for the right moment or the right person to uncover it? As we stand today looking back at the ruins of Confederate strongholds and abandoned train depots, the questions remain haunting. What became of the gold that so many depended upon for survival? Was it recovered, stolen, or scattered beyond recognition? And if even a fraction of it remains, lying undisturbed beneath centuries of earth and memory, what secrets does it hold about those final, desperate days of a nation in turmoil? The mystery of the lost Confederate gold endures not just as a story of wealth, but as a reflection of the uncertainty, fear, and hope that accompanied a country in the throes of its most defining conflict. And as the shadows lengthen over the southern landscapes where it may lie, we are left to wonder, could it still be out there waiting silently, hidden in plain sight, a silent witness to history that refuses to be fully told? As the disappearance of Colonel Dahlgren's papers, echoes of lost gold fade into the quiet forests and winding rivers of the South, another mystery emerges from the shadows of the American Civil War. One less tangible yet equally compelling, the disappearance of Colonel Ulrich Dahlgren's papers. Picture the scene: a small makeshift camp on the banks of the James River in Virginia late at night. Lanterns flicker in the mist, casting elongated shadows across hastily erected tents. Papers rustle in the wind, their edges worn and smudged with the ink of hurriedly drafted orders. Among them, Dahlgren's own documents, carefully folded instructions and strategic plans, vanish into the dark, leaving behind questions that would haunt historians for generations. Colonel Dahlgren, a Union officer, had embarked on a daring raid on Richmond in March of 1864, tasked with a mission so audacious that it captured the attention of both military leaders and the public alike. Yet the campaign ended in tragedy. Dahlgren himself was killed, and the papers he carried, potentially detailing plans of immense strategic significance, were never recovered. Official accounts suggest that they may have fallen into Confederate hands. Yet, despite intense searches, no trace of them ever surfaced. Could they have been deliberately destroyed, a casualty of the fog of war, or hidden in plain sight, waiting for someone to decipher their contents? The intrigue deepens when we examine contemporary reports. Newspapers of the time, filled with both rumor and outrage, claimed that Dahlgren's documents contained instructions so controversial that their discovery would shock the public. Some alleged the orders included plans for targeting high-ranking Confederate leaders, fueling a firestorm of speculation and conspiracy. Others suggested that the papers were misappropriated by local civilians or rogue operatives, their fates swallowed by the chaos of a city under siege. Historians have pored over these claims, sifting through eyewitness accounts, military dispatches, and surviving correspondences. Yet a definitive answer remains elusive. The geography of Richmond itself seems to guard the truth. Narrow streets, subterranean cellars, and hidden alleyways offered ample cover for the movement of sensitive materials. Could the papers have been buried beneath the city's foundations, perhaps in a building that no longer stands, lost to demolition and the passage of time? Some theories even suggest that certain Confederate sympathizers may have spirited them out of Virginia entirely, carrying their secrets across state lines and into private hands, leaving behind only fragments of rumor and innuendo. For decades, treasure hunters, archivists, and historians have pursued leads as meticulous as they are frustrating. Maps annotated with cryptic notes, letters hinting at secret exchanges, and archival materials unearthed in attics or hidden compartments have surfaced sporadically, but none have confirmed the existence of the missing documents. Each discovery raises further questions rather than providing closure. Why would such critical papers vanish without a trace? Was there a deliberate effort to suppress their contents, or were they simply casualties of circumstance lost in the maelstrom of war? Speculation continues to weave its intricate patterns. Some suggest that the papers, if found, might rewrite aspects of our understanding of the Civil War, shedding light on strategies, intentions, and covert operations that history has only hinted at. Others caution that the documents, if ever recovered, could be incomplete or misinterpreted, their true significance forever obscured by time and context. And yet it is precisely this uncertainty that keeps the mystery alive, a delicate balance between what we know, what we can infer, and what may forever remain beyond reach. Beyond the documents themselves lies a human story of ambition, risk, and sacrifice. Colonel Dahlgren's mission was perilous, conceived in secrecy and executed with urgency. The disappearance of his papers amplifies the sense of urgency and tragedy, as though the war itself had conspired to erase certain truths. In the quiet corners of history, amid the debris of battles and the silent corridors of abandoned buildings, we are left to wonder not only what the papers contained, but also what their absence has meant for our understanding of the conflict. As modern investigators retrace the steps of Dahlgren's fateful raid, following maps, letters, and fragments of oral history, the questions remain both tantalizing and unresolved. Where did the papers go after that fateful night? Were they destroyed in the chaos, hidden for protection, or taken by hands unknown? And if they still exist, buried or concealed, might they reveal secrets that challenge everything we think we know about the Civil War? In the end, the disappearance of Colonel Dahlgren's papers endures as a haunting enigma, an absence that speaks as loudly as any record ever could. It reminds us that history is never complete, that the past holds shadows as deep as any battlefield, and that even in the age of archives and technology, some mysteries may remain just out of reach, whispering their secrets to those who dare to seek them. From the vanished papers of Colonel Dahlgren, the trail of civil war, the vanishing of the Confederate Treasury train mysteries leads us deeper into the shadowed corridors of history to a story of steel smoke and the tantalizing gleam of gold, the vanishing of the Confederate Treasury train. Picture a lone railway line cutting through the rolling hills of Georgia, the rails glinting faintly in the morning sun, disappearing into dense forests and mist-filled valleys. Along this path, a heavily laden train, its cars packed with gold, silver, and valuable currency, moved with urgency, a lifeline for a faltering Confederacy. Yet as history tells it, that train disappeared, leaving behind questions that have refused to be answered for more than a century. In the spring of 1865, as the Confederacy teetered on the brink of collapse, Union forces pressed southward with relentless momentum. To protect the nation's remaining wealth, Confederate officials orchestrated the transfer of the treasury, barrels of gold coins, rolls of silver, and stacks of paper currency along the railroads, intending to secure it in safer locations. Official records detail the train's departure and route, but what happened afterward is shrouded in mystery. Some reports suggest that the train never reached its intended destination. Others imply that portions of its cargo were spirited away by Confederate sympathizers or opportunistic thieves. The terrain itself seems to conspire with the story. The railway wound through forests so dense that sunlight barely penetrates, over rivers whose currents could easily conceal evidence, and across marshes that swallowed tracks and carriages alike. Could the train have been deliberately hidden in a remote location, perhaps buried beneath earth and vegetation, or dismantled and dispersed to prevent capture? Eyewitness accounts are tantalizing but inconsistent. Some describe the train being stopped abruptly. Others claim it was ambushed, and still others whisper of entire cars disappearing overnight, as if swallowed by the land itself. Historians have pieced together fragments of evidence, remnants of old rail cars, letters from Confederate officials, and sporadic reports of gold surfacing decades later. Yet none provide a complete picture. Maps from the era mark towns and depots along the route, but there are stretches where no documentation survives, areas where speculation thrives. Were the missing assets stolen by desperate soldiers and civilians hidden in private estates, or transported across state lines to secret caches? Could some of the train's wealth have left the country entirely, entering shadowed networks of commerce that modern research struggles to trace? The story also invites more unusual possibilities. Local folklore tells of trains vanishing in thick fog, or of carts seen entering dense forests only to never reappear. Some have speculated that parts of the cargo were loaded onto smaller vehicles under cover of night, destined for locations that remain unknown. Others suggest that Confederate leaders may have deliberately orchestrated the disappearance, creating a smokescreen to protect their financial maneuverings as the war came to a bitter close. Each theory, supported in part by fragments of evidence, also carries its own gaps, leaving the mystery unresolved and compellingly open-ended. What adds to the intrigue is the human dimension. The men who rode those trains, the engineers and guards tasked with safeguarding fortunes in the midst of chaos, the families who relied upon the treasury to sustain their livelihoods. Were they complicit in hiding the wealth, or were they victims of circumstance, caught in the maelstrom of war and secrecy? Personal letters and memoirs hint at desperation, fear, and courage, but none disclosed the full story. As time passed, the trail grew colder, witnesses died, and the records vanished into obscurity, leaving only tantalizing fragments for later generations to follow. Modern treasure hunters, historians, and even casual enthusiasts have attempted to reconstruct the train's final journey using archival documents, old maps, and the occasional artifact unearthed from the soil. Each discovery is tantalizing, but the larger puzzle remains incomplete. Why did the train disappear without leaving a clear trace? Was it a deliberate act of concealment, the result of theft, or simply a casualty of the chaotic final days of the Confederacy? And if even a fraction of the treasury remains hidden, where might it be today? Buried beneath forest floor, submerged in riverbeds, or locked away in a private collection unknown to history? The vanishing of the Confederate treasury train endures as a haunting enigma. It is a story of wealth, strategy, desperation, and uncertainty. A tangible yet elusive symbol of a nation in collapse. And as we peer into the landscapes where rails once glinted and steam once hissed, the questions remain. What became of the treasure that should have traveled so many miles but was never seen again? And does it, after more than a century, still lie somewhere waiting silently, hidden in the folds of a history that refuses to be fully revealed? As the echoes of vanished trains fade into the quiet forests and the real identity of the woman in the window, abandoned railbeds of the South, another Civil War mystery emerges, one far more intimate yet equally haunting. The story of the woman in the window. Picture a small war-torn town, its streets littered with debris and the remnants of hurriedly abandoned homes. One house, weathered and nearly forgotten, sits at the edge of the main road. Its windows, cracked by time and storm, catch the first light of dawn, and behind one of them, for reasons still unexplained, a solitary figure is said to have appeared. A woman gazing outward, her expression unreadable, a silent witness to the war's final acts. Eyewitnesses from the period describe her with striking consistency. She is seen in the same window over days, sometimes hours, always watching, never moving from her post. Some accounts suggest she may have been waiting for someone, an officer, a messenger, or perhaps a loved one lost to battle. Others hint that she was guarding secrets within the house, protecting correspondence, valuables, or intelligence vital to the war effort. And yet, despite her apparent constancy, when observers attempted to approach, she seemed to vanish, leaving only an empty room and a lingering sense of unease. Historical records confirm the house's existence and the presence of civilians during the war, but the woman herself is curiously absent from official documents. Letters from local residents mention a mysterious figure in passing, often paired with expressions of fear or awe, but none provide a definitive identification. Could she have been a spy, operating in the shadows of a collapsing confederacy, or merely a civilian trapped in the chaos of occupation? Did she survive the war, or did the last glimpse of her mark the final chapter of a life consumed by conflict? The location itself adds layers to the enigma. Many of these sightings took place in towns that had witnessed skirmishes, raids, and sudden evacuations. Streets that were once vibrant with commerce became silent almost overnight, leaving buildings to decay and memories to fade. The window elevated above the street offered a vantage point both practical and symbolic, a perch for observation, a threshold between safety and danger, a frame through which the horrors and hopes of a nation in turmoil were silently witnessed. It is within this interplay of architecture and circumstance that the mystery gains its compelling quality. Speculation has long filled the gaps left by official accounts. Some historians propose that the woman may have been involved in intelligence operations, tasked with signaling troop movements or storing confidential messages in the house. Others suggest a more personal narrative, that of a grieving widow waiting endlessly for news of a loved one who would never return. Folklore embellishes these interpretations, recounting fleeting glimpses of a figure in period dress, sometimes appearing to peers long after the war had ended. Could these stories be the echoes of memory distorted by time, or fragments of truth persisting against the erosion of history? Adding to the intrigue are contemporary searches of property records and local archives, which hint at families living in the house, but provide no clear connection to the enigmatic observer. Even photographs from the era, rare as they are, fail to capture her presence, leaving only descriptions preserved in diaries and oral histories. For modern researchers, these gaps are both frustrating and fascinating. Every lead raises as many questions as it answers. Was she known by name in her own time, or deliberately concealed to protect her identity? Did she witness events that, if recorded, might alter our understanding of the local or even national narrative? There is also the broader human dimension to consider. In a period defined by violence, uncertainty, and displacement, the idea of a solitary figure remaining at a window evokes profound symbolism, vigilance, patience, loss, and resilience. Could her unwavering gaze reflect an effort to preserve hope, to maintain control in the face of chaos, or simply to bear silent witness to the upheaval around her? And if so, what does her disappearance tell us about the fragility of memory and the selectivity of history itself? As we look today at the remnants of towns touched by war, at homes weathered by decades and overgrown with vegetation, the woman in the window continues to captivate our imagination. She embodies the intersection of fact and speculation, of tangible history and lingering mystery. And though we may never know her name, her purpose, or her fate, the image persists, a quiet enigma frozen in time, inviting reflection and demanding curiosity. The real identity of the woman in the window remains as elusive as the whispers carried on the wind through empty streets and abandoned homes. Was she protector, observer, or symbol? And in her silence, what truths about the Civil War, its human cost, its hidden acts, and its unresolved questions might still be waiting to be uncovered. The death of Stonewall Jackson. From the quiet enigma of the woman in the window, our exploration of Civil War mysteries moves into the fog-laden hills of Virginia, where one of the most extraordinary and controversial events of the conflict occurred: the death of General Thomas Stonewall Jackson. Picture the scene on the morning of May the 2nd, 1863, near Chancellorsville. A battlefield cloaked in dense morning mist, dew clinging to the grass, cannon smoke curling lazily in the low light. Amid the chaos of wounded soldiers and the shouts of officers, Jackson rode ahead of his lines, moving with a confidence and decisiveness that had earned him legendary status. But what unfolded next would forever cast a shadow over his legacy and spark questions that remain unresolved. Jackson was struck by friendly fire, a tragic irony in a war defined by miscommunication and misfortune. He was hit by bullets fired by his own men, wounded in his left arm and right hand. Evacuated to a nearby field hospital, he seemed to stabilize at first. Yet within days, he succumbed not directly to his injuries, but to complications. Pneumonia set in, weakening him further until his death on May 10th, 1863. Historical accounts provide these facts with remarkable consistency. Yet the circumstances surrounding his wounding, his treatment, and even his final hours invite scrutiny and speculation. How could one of the most disciplined Confederate units allow such a calamity to occur? Were there lapses in command, errors in communication, or perhaps deeper forces at play that history has overlooked? The location itself, the rugged hills, the narrow trails, and the encampments hastily erected in the wake of battle contributed to the confusion. Witnesses describe mist so thick that visibility was reduced to a few yards, a natural veil that obscured intentions and movements. Soldiers misidentified friend from foe, and Jackson's daring reconnaissance placed him in a perilous position. Could the terrain and the fog alone account for the tragedy? Or was it the culmination of a series of misjudgments that some argue bordered on the inexplicable? Medical treatment at the time offers another layer of complexity. Jackson's arm was amputated, a procedure intended to save his life. Yet it also exposed him to infection. Contemporary medical records and letters suggest that he received care that was by the standards of the day competent. But modern analysis raises questions about timing, hygiene, and the availability of resources. Was pneumonia an inevitable consequence of injury, or were there preventable factors that contributed to his decline? Some historians have even explored the possibility of medical missteps or the unintentional transmission of disease within field hospitals. Yet no definitive answers emerge, leaving a sense of ambiguity that continues to perplex researchers. Beyond logistics and medicine, the human element adds both tragedy and intrigue. Jackson was not only a military genius, but a figure of near mythical devotion to his men and to his cause. His sudden incapacitation and death profoundly affected morale, strategy, and the psychological state of Confederate forces. Could his death have been prevented? And if so, would the course of the war have changed? Or was this a stark reminder that even the most brilliant leaders are vulnerable to the randomness of warfare? Such questions linger unanswerable, compelling us to ponder the fragile balance between skill, circumstance, and fate. Speculation has extended even further into areas less tangible, but equally compelling. Some contemporaneous accounts hint at rumors of possible espionage or betrayal, whispers of Confederate dissent or discontent among subordinates. Others suggest symbolic interpretations, viewing Jackson's death as a foreshadowing of the Confederacy's ultimate unraveling. While these theories remain unverified, they illustrate the enduring fascination with Jackson's demise, showing how historical events can generate layers of meaning beyond the mere facts. The mystery of Stonewall Jackson's death is amplified by the enduring mythology surrounding him. Monuments, memoirs, and battlefield tours immortalize his courage and skill, yet they cannot resolve the ambiguities of that final week. As we walk the terrain today, tracing the paths he rode, examining the field hospital's remains, and reading the letters penned by those who were there, the questions echo. Could modern knowledge of medicine, communication, and battlefield tactics have prevented this loss? What might have been revealed if his personal papers or orders from those days survived intact? And even now, more than a century and a half later, do the hills of Chancellorsville still hold secrets about the final moments of the man who became a symbol of both brilliance and tragedy? Stonewall Jackson's death remains more than a historical footnote. It is a puzzle, a meditation on the unpredictability of war, and a reminder that even legends are subject to forces beyond control. In the quiet aftermath of battle, amidst the mist and the memory, we are left to wonder what truths about that day and about the life it claimed might still lie hidden, waiting for the careful eye to uncover them. From the misty hills of the missing Confederate submarine, Hunley's crew, Chancellorsville, and the tragedy of Stonewall Jackson, our journey now moves to the dark waters off the coast of Charleston, South Carolina, where a different kind of mystery silently lingers beneath the waves. The fate of the crew of the Confederate submarine Hunley. Picture a narrow iron vessel barely 20 feet long, resting just below the water's surface. Its hull is scarred and rusted by time, a slender silhouette against the shifting tides, a monument to ingenuity, desperation, and the unforgiving nature of war. In 1864, this vessel was both marvel and menace, a technological experiment in stealth and lethality that would vanish from sight, leaving questions that have endured for more than a century. The Hunley was conceived as a weapon to break the Union blockade of Charleston Harbor. Powered by hand-crank propulsion, the crew relied on their own strength and coordination, confined within a space scarcely larger than a coffin. On the night of February 17, 1864, the submarine achieved a historic first. It successfully sank the USS Housatonic, marking the first time a submarine had destroyed an enemy warship in combat. But the victory came at a staggering cost. Moments after the attack, the Hunley itself disappeared beneath the dark waters along with all 8 men on board. Despite numerous searches over the following decades, the submarine's resting place remained unknown, and with it, the fate of its crew became a haunting enigma. Contemporary reports describe a vessel that was audacious, fragile, and dangerously experimental. Some historians suggest that the attack may have caused a concussion wave strong enough to incapacitate the crew, while others propose that navigational errors or flooding led to the vessel's final descent. Yet none of these theories fully explains how trained men, aware of the risks, could vanish entirely without leaving a trace. What exactly occurred in those final moments remains uncertain, a puzzle left in the cold embrace of the Atlantic. The location itself adds layers of complexity. The waters around Charleston are shallow yet treacherous, filled with sandbars, tidal shifts, and shifting channels that could easily obscure a small submarine. Could the Hunley have struck an unseen obstacle or been dragged beneath currents strong enough to mask its presence for more than a century? Local lore suggests sightings of strange disturbances on the water of a silhouette, glimpsed in the fog, feeding speculation and a sense of eerie persistence. Could these fleeting impressions be memory, myth, or a hint of truths still concealed beneath the harbor's floor? Historical investigation has uncovered fragments of the story. Letters from naval officers, newspaper accounts, and sketches of the vessel all confirm its existence and detail its missions. Yet none can fully account for the disappearance of the crew or the submarine itself. Even when the wreck was finally located in 1995 and later raised in 2000, forensic analysis revealed only the remains of the men, silent in their positions with little indication of panic or struggle. Why did the submarine sink so quickly? Were there technical failures, environmental factors, or simply the misfortune of being in the wrong place at the wrong time? Each possibility raises as many questions as it answers. Speculation has extended into broader theories, some more unusual than others. Could the submarine have been sabotaged from within? Was there an undetected flaw in the iron hull, a subtle miscalculation in ballast, or a collision with unseen debris? Fringe theories suggest almost supernatural interference, pointing to the suddenness of the disappearance and the precision of the Housatonic's sinking. But these remain unproven. What is certain is that the mystery combines human ingenuity with the merciless unpredictability of nature and technology, a combination that leaves us grappling with possibilities rather than facts. Beyond the technical considerations lies the human story. The men of the Hunley were volunteers, soldiers, and sailors who accepted extraordinary risk for the promise of tactical advantage. Their courage is evident in every detail of the vessel's operation, from the hand-cranked propulsion to the cramped and suffocating quarters. Yet their disappearance reminds us of the fragility of human life in wartime, of how bravery and innovation can be rendered silent by the forces of circumstance. What thoughts filled their final moments? Did they understand the peril? Or were they struck by a sudden calamity they could neither predict nor survive? As we peer today at the rusted hull, resting quietly beneath the waters, the mystery endures. The Hunley and its crew are both artifact and enigma, frozen in time, yet provoking endless questions. How did this vessel, so small yet so significant, vanish from history immediately after its greatest achievement? And as the ocean keeps its secrets, what truths about these men, their mission and their final moments remain hidden, waiting for the patient observer to uncover them from the depths of Charleston's harbor and the silent resting place of the Hunley, our journey? The mystery of Lincoln's missing train car now moves to the steel rails that crisscrossed a nation at war, to a story of transportation, security, and enduring mystery. The missing train car of President Abraham Lincoln. Imagine a long, gleaming rail car, its polished wood and brass fittings gleaming in the midday sun, stationed at a quiet depot in the midst of a bustling rail network. It was not merely a vehicle for conveyance. It was a symbol of authority, a mobile command center, and for a brief moment, a repository of secrets and significance that would vanish from sight, leaving historians and collectors puzzled for decades. During the height of the Civil War, Lincoln relied on a specially outfitted rail car for travel between the front lines and Washington, D.C., moving discreetly and often under heavy guard. This car, designed for both comfort and security, allowed him to meet with generals, review sensitive dispatches, and maintain oversight of the nation's war efforts while on the move. Yet over time, accounts of its whereabouts grew fragmented, and at some point, the car itself disappeared from official records and public view. While some suggest it was decommissioned or dismantled for parts, others point to anomalies in railroad logs and maintenance records that hint at a more curious fate. The location itself seems almost conspiratorial. Railyards in the mid-19th century were sprawling, chaotic places with multiple tracks, sidings, and storage facilities. Cars could be moved, hidden, or repurposed without widespread notice. Could Lincoln's rail car have been quietly reassigned, sold, or modified, leaving little trace of its original identity? Eyewitness reports are scarce and often contradictory. Some recall seeing a car matching its description during troop movements, while others insist it vanished entirely, never to be seen on the rails again. How could a piece of presidential history simply slip into obscurity in a period when the war effort demanded meticulous record-keeping? Speculation extends beyond mere bureaucratic oversight. Some historians have suggested that the car may have been intentionally hidden or repurposed during the chaos of reconstruction, perhaps to protect sensitive documents or equipment. Others have entertained the possibility that certain elements of the rail car, including secret compartments or hidden safes, were stripped away to secure confidential communications and military intelligence. Could parts of the car have ended up in private collections, quietly dispersed across the country? And if so, what artifacts or information might still lie concealed unseen by historians, or the public? Contemporary reports provide tantalizing but incomplete clues. Maintenance logs, railroad correspondences, and wartime dispatches reference the car intermittently, but always in passing, never providing full continuity. A letter from a railroad official mentions the movement of a special car, but does not identify it by name. Newspaper accounts describe Lincoln's travels in the car, yet fail to clarify its final disposition. For modern investigators, these gaps create both frustration and fascination. They allow for multiple plausible explanations, none of which can be definitively confirmed. The mystery also invites reflection on the broader context of the era. Railroads were critical arteries for the Union, moving troops, supplies, and communications across vast distances. A presidential rail car was not just a luxury, it was a strategic asset. The possibility that such an object could vanish, leaving minimal trace, underscores both the tumult of wartime logistics and the impermanence of material history. Could the disappearance of Lincoln's car reveal vulnerabilities in the record-keeping and security practices of the period? Or does it hint at intentional obfuscation, a deliberate erasure of a vehicle that carried not only a president, but the weight of national secrets? Beyond the technical and historical questions, the story evokes the human element. The men and women who maintained, guarded, and traveled within the car had knowledge that vanished along with it. Were there eyewitnesses who could have clarified its fate? And if so, why do their accounts conflict or disappear? How much of what we believe we know is based on fragments, anecdote, and inference, rather than documented certainty? As we trace the history of Lincoln's missing train car through archival documents, sketches, and scattered references, we confront a profound sense of absence. It is a tangible object, rendered almost mythical by its disappearance. A piece of the nation's history, once mobile, now immobilized in uncertainty. And so the questions linger. Where did the car go? Was it dismantled, hidden, or repurposed in ways that erased its identity? And if any portion of it survives today, sitting quietly in a forgotten rail yard or private collection, what stories might it still hold about the movement of a nation at war and the man who led it? From the Phantom of Gettysburg, silent rails that once carried Lincoln and the mystery of his vanished train car, we now journey to the rolling hills and sun-bleached fields of Pennsylvania, where one of the bloodiest battles in American history left not only scars on the land, but shadows in memory. The story of the Phantom of Gettysburg. Picture a fog-draped morning at the Gettysburg battlefield, the early light softening the contours of Little Round Top and Cemetery Ridge. Cannonballs and musket fire have long been replaced by the gentle rustling of grass and the occasional whisper of wind through the trees. But some insist that not all echoes of that fateful July linger only in history books. The legend centers on a mysterious figure said to appear at dusk or in the early hours, clad in a tattered uniform of a Union soldier. Eyewitness accounts, recorded over decades, describe the figure moving silently across the fields where so many fell, sometimes pausing as if scanning the horizon or searching for someone long gone. Skeptics suggest fatigue, imagination, or the interplay of fog and light. Yet the consistency of these reports across generations invites closer examination. What draws this figure to the same ground repeatedly over so many years? Is it memory manifest or something that history itself refuses to release? Gettysburg, both in 1863 and today, is a landscape dense with stories and evidence. Trenches, ridges, and stone markers trace the movements of tens of thousands of soldiers. Over 3 days, the battle claimed more than 50,000 lives, leaving behind a mosaic of graves, relics, and abandoned artifacts. Could the phantom be a lingering presence tethered to a place where so much suffering, courage, and chaos converged? Or is the figure a symbol projected by collective memory, shaped by the weight of tragedy that permeates the ground itself? Historical reports lend context, but rarely explanation. Letters, diaries, and newspaper articles from the post-war era mention sightings of soldiers walking alone, observing patterns inconsistent with the terrain or movement of living men. Some accounts describe figures vanishing upon approach, leaving only impressions in the grass or the faint scent of gunpowder in the air. Others suggest fleeting glimpses of faces illuminated by twilight, expressions of longing or sorrow, as if the figure carries memories of orders unfulfilled or comrades lost. Could these experiences be fragments of residual energy echoing through time? Or do they point to more practical explanations, perhaps misidentification or the mind's attempt to reconcile the enormity of past violence with the present stillness? The topography of Gettysburg itself plays a role in the enigma. Dense tree lines, low-lying fog in the valleys, and the undulating hills create natural frames and shadows that can deceive the eye. Could the phantom be the product of these optical effects magnified by expectation and the weight of historical knowledge? Or is there something more, an unrecorded event? A soldier left behind in chaos, whose story is carried forward in legend rather than documentation. For generations, visitors have walked the fields, feeling a sense of unease or awe, and reporting impressions that cannot easily be dismissed. Speculation extends into both psychological and metaphysical realms. Some theorists suggest that the battlefield itself acts as a repository for extreme emotion, trauma, and fear, a place where moments of profound intensity can imprint on the environment. Others argue for a more literal interpretation, that a spirit or lingering presence remains, wandering the landscape it once knew, bound by duty, regret, or memory. Regardless of interpretation, the reports persist. The figure appears, observes, and vanishes, leaving behind only questions and the occasional flattened patch of grass or disturbed soil. Yet the mystery is not purely about the apparition. It is about the intersection of history, memory, and human perception. Gettysburg is a site of extraordinary significance where strategy, heroism, and human cost collided. Could the phantom be a reminder of what is lost in the translation from living experience to written record? Could it be a manifestation of the countless stories that were never told, the orders never received, the soldiers whose names faded from memory? As we walk today along the ridges and fields, retracing the steps of those who fought and died, the phantom of Gettysburg lingers in imagination and report alike. Whether a figment of perception, a lingering echo of violence, or a presence that defies explanation, it embodies the enduring questions that accompany any exploration of the past. And as the sun dips behind the horizon, casting long shadows across the battlefield, one cannot help but wonder what truly lingers in places shaped by profound history, and what secrets remain just beyond the reach of record and reason, waiting quietly to be noticed once more. From the lingering echoes of Gettysburg and the shadowy figure of the phantom, our exploration, the missing Dahlgren Papers' true author, returns to Virginia, to the riverbanks and encampments where one of the most contentious and debated documents of the Civil War first appeared. The Dahlgren Papers. Picture a small riverside camp near Richmond, shrouded in fog and the muted sounds of activity as soldiers move quietly among tents and wagons. There, a bundle of papers, typed and handwritten, bearing orders that would ignite. Outrage and speculation was discovered in the aftermath of Colonel Ulrich Dahlgren's ill-fated raid. Yet from the moment of their discovery, a question has loomed larger than the contents themselves. Who truly authored these papers? Official accounts at the time attributed the documents directly to Dahlgren, a young Union officer known for daring operations and unflinching ambition. The papers allegedly contained orders for an assault on Richmond, including instructions that many contemporaries found shocking. Even criminal orders to free Union prisoners and allegedly to target Confederate leaders. Newspapers and politicians seized upon the documents, some declaring them evidence of barbarity, others questioning their authenticity. But the circumstances of their recovery were chaotic, leaving room for doubt. Could Dahlgren himself have written them, or were they the product of another hand, forged or manipulated in the heat of war? The location where the papers were found adds another layer of intrigue. Hidden among the debris of retreating forces, amid hastily abandoned equipment and the scattered remnants of battle, the documents might have been misplaced, planted, or altered before discovery. Witness accounts conflict. Some assert that the papers were in Dahlgren's possession at the time of his death. Others claim they were intercepted from couriers or found in Confederate hands. Each scenario opens new questions. Were the papers authentic, or were they part of a deliberate attempt to malign, to inflame Southern sentiment, and to influence public perception of the Union Army? The historical record provides clues, but no definitive answers. Dahlgren was known for meticulous planning and for extreme measures when executing orders, which makes authorship plausible. Yet handwriting analysis conducted in later decades suggested inconsistencies, sparking further debate. Some historians have proposed that senior officers may have drafted or modified the documents, attaching Dahlgren's name to lend them authority or to serve as a convenient scapegoat. Could the papers in fact have been a form of psychological warfare designed to intimidate or manipulate both Confederate leaders? And public opinion speculation stretches even further into unconventional theories. Could rival factions within the Union Army have used the documents to discredit Dahlgren? Were there attempts to conceal or destroy evidence that might have revealed higher-level involvement? Some fringe suggestions posit that the papers were deliberately fabricated after the raid, a political weapon rather than a literal set of operational orders. Each possibility underscores the difficulty of separating fact from interpretation, revealing how one set of documents can become a prism through which multiple narratives of history are refracted. The human dimension intensifies the mystery. Dahlgren's own reputation, courage, and ambition are entwined with the papers, raising questions about his character, judgment, and intentions. If he wrote them, what drove him to conceive such controversial orders? If someone else authored them, what motives shaped their words? And how did those motives exploit the chaos of war? The documents, though small in physical size, carry enormous weight. They illuminate not only military planning, but the complex interplay of politics, perception, and propaganda in a nation divided. Even today, the Dahlgren papers invite reflection on authorship, credibility, and historical memory. Archival searches, forensic examinations, and scholarly analysis have provided insight into the circumstances of their creation. But no definitive attribution has emerged. The debate continues, with each new interpretation layered atop previous ones, creating a mosaic of possibility and uncertainty. Could future discoveries, perhaps overlooked letters, personal diaries, or newly examined official records, clarify The truth, or will the papers remain an enduring puzzle, their origins forever obscured by time and intent? As we consider the faded ink, the careful phrasing, and the historical context of these documents, the question of authorship persists. The Dogrin papers serve as a reminder that history is rarely straightforward. The documentation can be both illuminating and deceptive, and that the shadows of war often conceal more than they reveal. And so, the mystery endures. Who truly wrote the Dogrin papers, and what secrets, intentions, or strategies remain hidden within their lines, waiting silently for discovery or interpretation from the tangled controversies surrounding the Dogrin? The disappearance of General George B. McClellan's private journals papers, our exploration now turns to another enigma of Civil War history. This one intimately tied to the mind of a man whose strategies shaped the Union's campaigns. The missing private journals of General George B. McClellan. Imagine a study in a stately Washington residence late at night. Lanterns casting a soft glow over papers stacked meticulously on a polished desk. There, McClellan, cautious, exacting, and deeply reflective, recorded his thoughts, decisions, and impressions of a nation at war. These journals, private and unpolished, were meant to capture the mind of a general navigating extraordinary responsibility. Yet, for reasons that remain elusive, they vanished from history, leaving only tantalizing hints of what they might have revealed. McClellan was known for both brilliance and caution, a commander whose campaigns were scrutinized by allies and critics alike. His public correspondence survives in abundance. Yet the journals kept in his own hand were considered highly personal, detailing assessments of battles, troop morale, and even the president's decisions. According to scattered accounts, these writings contained insights into his controversial delays during campaigns, his opinions on rival generals, and perhaps reflections on the political pressures that constrained his command. But when historians sought these private volumes after the war, they were gone, leaving a void in the record and sparking decades of speculation. The circumstances of their disappearance are murky. Some suggest that McClellan himself may have destroyed or hidden them, either to protect sensitive information or to shape his legacy posthumously. Others propose that the journals were lost during the chaotic movement of his papers after the war, potentially misfiled or appropriated by private collectors. Certain reports even hint at deliberate confiscation. Could someone have seen the value of these records, both for historical insight and political leverage, and removed them before they could reach the public? Each scenario raises questions that the surviving documentation cannot answer. The locations involved in this mystery, Washington offices, Richmond correspondence channels, and McClellan's personal residences, add layers of intrigue. These were places filled with assistants, secretaries, and clerks, all handling sensitive materials under intense wartime pressure. Could the journals have been mislaid amidst the shuffle, or did they vanish through a more calculated act taken by someone with access and knowledge of their importance? Eyewitness reports are sparse, often contradictory, with some asserting that the journals were intact as late as 1870, while others claim they disappeared immediately after McClellan's death. What, if anything, can these conflicting accounts reveal about the journey of these missing documents? The content, had it survived, remains a tantalizing mystery. McClellan's reflections could have shed light on critical decisions, providing clarity on why he hesitated at moments that some historians argue could have changed the war's trajectory. Could he have revealed alternative strategies for campaigns like the Peninsula or Anti-Doom, or shared candid assessments of Lincoln, Davis, and other key figures? Perhaps his private thoughts contained confessions, regrets, or revelations that might challenge the conventional understanding of the Civil War's command structure. The absence of these journals leaves an unfillable gap, a silent presence in historical discourse that invites endless conjecture. Speculation has extended into both scholarly and more fringe realms. Some theorists suggest that the journals were deliberately withheld to protect reputations or to maintain political narratives favorable to certain factions. Others argue that they may have fallen into the hands of collectors who recognized their value and kept them secret, scattered across private archives and inaccessible to researchers. Could there even be copies tucked away in attics or obscure collections waiting to emerge centuries later? The possibility tantalizes historians and enthusiasts alike, highlighting the fragility of historical memory and the ways in which human intention can alter what survives for posterity. Beyond the questions of authorship and provenance, the mystery underscores the personal dimension of war. Llewellyn's journals, private reflections of a man in extraordinary circumstances, remind us that history is not only recorded in orders and reports, but also in the quiet deliberations of those tasked with impossible choices. The journal's disappearance prompts reflection on what is lost when private experience and historical record diverge. What stories, judgments, and lessons vanish with them as we trace the life and campaigns of Llewellyn through letters, memoirs, and official reports. The absence of his private journals is a persistent ghost in the record. They remain a silent enigma, a window into a mind that shaped the war, but whose innermost thoughts are forever obscured. And so we are left to wonder what truths about leadership, decision-making, and human judgment during America's greatest conflict might still lie hidden in those missing pages, waiting to be discovered or perhaps destined to remain unknown. The mystery of the Confederate cipher wheel. From the vanished pages of Llewellyn's private reflections, we move into a different realm of secrecy, where words and numbers themselves became weapons of war, the Confederate cipher wheel. Imagine a small, intricately crafted device, no larger than a pocket watch with rotating discs etched with letters and numbers. It is cold to the touch, its polished surface catching the flicker of candlelight in a dimly lit tent. Soldiers and officers tasked with transmitting orders and intelligence across hostile lines would have relied on such tools to encode their messages, turning simple correspondence into an encrypted lifeline. Yet for all its precision and promise, the cipher wheel has vanished from historical record, leaving only scattered references and tantalizing questions about its existence and use. The device was reportedly employed by Confederate operatives and officers to maintain secrecy, sending instructions between generals and couriers who risked capture or death. Contemporary accounts describe it as a marvel of ingenuity, a symbol of the Confederacy's resourcefulness under siege. But details are sparse, and surviving references are ambiguous. Was the cipher wheel a prototype, used in only a handful of operations, or a standard tool, quietly integrated into the Army's communications network? Some historians suggest that the lack of surviving examples is due to the chaotic collapse of Confederate supply lines in the war's final months. Others hint at something more deliberate, the possibility that the device or the knowledge of its workings was deliberately hidden or destroyed to prevent it from falling into Union hands. The location and context of its use add further layers of mystery. Field dispatches were often moved under cover of darkness, concealed in ordinary items, and carried through enemy territory by trusted couriers. Could the cipher wheel have been lost during one such operation? Its contents and mechanisms buried, forgotten, or stolen reports suggest that at least one Confederate officer referred to a mechanical key used to encode sensitive communications. Yet whether this referred to a single device, multiple iterations, or a metaphorical tool remains unresolved. And if the device survived the war, where did it go? Could it have been sold, hidden, or quietly archived in a private collection? Its true function obscured by time, the very design of the cipher wheel invites speculation. Constructed with rotating discs capable of producing complex letter sequences, it may have been sophisticated enough to confound even trained cryptographers. Could some of the Confederacy's lost or delayed messages be explained by the use of such a device? messages that remain indecipherable today due to incomplete understanding of its mechanisms. Fringe theories suggest that certain Confederate communications intercepted by Union forces were never fully decoded, hinting at secrets that might still be buried within archives, waiting for the key that has been lost for more than a century. Beyond the mechanics, there is the human element. The men who operated the cipher wheel were entrusted with extraordinary responsibility. Each encoded message could determine the movement of troops, the success of a raid, or the fate of captured soldiers. Did the operators themselves understand the full potential of the device? Or were they executing instructions without knowing the broader strategy? Could human error or the pressures of war have contributed to the loss of the device itself, even as it carried information crucial to Confederate operations evidence? Though scant, sparks tantalizing possibilities. Correspondence between officers hints at frustration with lost codes, references to keys and mechanical ciphers, and the occasional warning that messages must never fall into enemy hands. Yet no surviving cipher wheel has been located, and no complete set of encrypted messages has been definitively decoded. Is this absence the result of deliberate destruction, the chaos of war, or a combination of both? Or might it indicate that the device's secrets have simply been overlooked, misfiled or misidentified in private archives or museums? The mystery of the Confederate cipher wheel lies not only in its disappearance, but in the questions it raises about secrecy, ingenuity, and the impermanence of knowledge. It is a tangible artifact that has vanished, leaving behind only references, hints, and unanswered questions. Could the device or its blueprint still exist somewhere awaiting discovery by a careful researcher? And if it does, what lost history, orders, strategies, or insights into the Confederate command might it reveal to a world still fascinated by the Civil War's hidden layers? As we examine the sparse references, sketches, and recollections that hint at the cipher wheel's existence, the device becomes more than a tool. It is a symbol of the elusiveness of history itself. And so we are left to ponder what secrets encoded in rotating discs and concealed by time might still be waiting, quietly hidden, to illuminate the minds and strategies of those who fought in America's most devastating conflict. From the secrets encoded in Confederate cipher wheels, our journey now moves into the fate of John Wilkes Booth alleys and rural hideaways of post-Civil War America, where one of the nation's most infamous figures vanished from view. John Wilkes Booth. Picture the dense woods of southern Maryland, a moonlit night filtering through branches, the air thick with fog and tension. It was here in the hours and days following the assassination of President Abraham Lincoln that Booth's presence loomed like a specter, eluding Union troops and law enforcement in a desperate flight from justice. Yet even in the light of history, the question persists. What truly became of John Wilkes Booth, a celebrated actor turned assassin, disappeared after fleeing Ford's Theater in Washington, D.C. on April 14, 1865. Historical records recount his crossing of the Navy Yard Bridge into Maryland, followed by days of pursuit through farmsteads, riverside swamps, and wooded hollows. Official accounts state that he was cornered in a tobacco barn on a Virginia farm, where he was fatally shot by Sergeant Boston Corbett. Yet from the earliest moments, inconsistencies in eyewitness testimonies, discrepancies in reports, and delayed communications have fueled doubt. Could Booth have perished in that barn, as widely believed, or did he slip away, escaping into the wider world, to vanish entirely from historical record? The location of his final confrontation adds both drama and ambiguity. The Garrett Farm, a modest homestead on the P2X edge, was surrounded by fields and dense timber, offering both concealment and escape routes. Eyewitness accounts describe smoke rising as the barn was set aflame, a desperate attempt to flush out the fugitive. Yet questions remain. Were the identification procedures rigorous, or could confusion, chaos, and the desire for closure have produced a mistaken belief in his death? Some researchers point to variations in photographs, skeletal remains, and official documentation as sources of ongoing uncertainty. How reliable is a narrative reconstructed in the urgency of national shock and political pressure? Speculation about Booth's fate has spanned more than a century. Some historians have suggested that a small cadre of loyal Confederate sympathizers could have spirited him across the border, concealing him in remote areas or arranging his escape to another country. Fringe theories propose that Booth adopted a new identity, living out his life in obscurity while official records cemented a false conclusion. Others maintain that the official story is accurate, yet acknowledge the persistent anomalies in evidence: missing dental records, contradictory eyewitness descriptions, and the peculiar circumstances surrounding Corbett's use of lethal force. Each inconsistency leaves the story open to interpretation, the shadows around Booth growing as time advances. The human and political dimensions compound the mystery. The nation, reeling from Lincoln's assassination, demanded swift retribution, and the pursuit of Booth became a symbol of justice for a grieving public. Could the urgency of political expectation have influenced the documentation and reporting of his demise? Were there incentives, conscious or unconscious, to present a definitive conclusion, even if absolute certainty was unattainable? And if Booth did survive, what motivated him to disappear completely, avoiding capture and leaving no trace beyond rumor and whispered tales? Physical evidence offers tantalizing yet inconclusive clues. Photographs purportedly of Booth's corpse circulated widely, yet skeptics point to inconsistencies in facial features and body structure. Remains believed to be his were buried and later exhumed, but controversy over their authenticity persisted for decades. Even the site of his alleged death, preserved as a historical landmark, seems to invite more questions than answers. Why do some local reports, family letters, and early news dispatches diverge so significantly from the official account? Could these gaps suggest cover-up, misidentification, or simply the chaos of a country in mourning and transition? The legend of John Wilkes Booth endures precisely because of this uncertainty. He exists at the intersection of history, memory, and myth, a figure whose known actions irrevocably shaped the nation, yet whose final fate remains tantalizingly unresolved. Could he have lived under a false identity, watched the country he once attacked move on and died in secret, or did he truly meet his end in that Virginia barn, leaving only discrepancies and doubts to tantalize historians and the curious alike? As we trace Booth's movements, examine records, and consider the context of a nation in crisis, the question remains: what is real, what is assumed, and what has been lost to time? In the fog of pursuit, the flash of gunfire, and the chaos of aftermath, John Wilkes Booth vanished into legend and uncertainty, leaving a mystery that continues to haunt the edges of history. And so we are left to wonder what secrets of his final hours might still lie hidden, waiting to challenge everything we believe about one of America's most infamous fugitives. From the Perryville light phenomenon, the shadows of fugitives and vanished men, our exploration moves to the rolling hills and quiet hollows of Kentucky, to a field where echoes of battle seem to linger long after the last gunfire faded. The site of the Perryville battlefield. Picture a mist-laden night, dew settling on the tall grasses, and a faint flickering glow hovering over the landscape. This is where witnesses have reported the mysterious Ville light, a phenomenon that has puzzled locals, historians, and visitors alike for generations. It is a quiet, unassuming light moving erratically, appearing in places where no fire, lantern, or human presence is immediately evident. Yet its presence seems tied to the memory of the bloody engagement that occurred there in October 1862. The Battle of Ville was a violent and chaotic encounter involving tens of thousands of soldiers, artillery and cavalry, leaving thousands dead or wounded. The land itself, once scarred by trenches, cannon craters, and hastily dug graves, carries an intensity that some claim transcends the purely physical. Could the Vil light be a manifestation of those events, a residual echo of the battle, or a natural phenomenon misinterpreted through the lens of history and emotion? Witnesses have described the light as hovering, shifting and occasionally retreating, sometimes appearing in alignment with old troop movements or along the ridgelines where key confrontations occurred. Historical accounts offer some clues, but no definitive explanation. Local newspapers from the late 19th and early 20th centuries mention mysterious lights over the battlefield, often interpreted by superstitious residents as omens or spirits of the fallen soldiers. During more recent decades, visitors have reported similar occurrences, describing a luminous, almost ethereal quality, moving slowly and deliberately, sometimes vanishing as quickly as it appeared. Could these experiences be the product of natural atmospheric phenomena, such as marsh gases, or reflections from distant sources, or do they hint at something more inexplicable? A convergence of memory, emotion, and light that defies conventional explanation. The geography of Vil contributes to the enigma. Rolling hills, wooded hollows, and low-lying areas prone to fog create an environment where optical illusions and reflections could easily occur. And some scientists have proposed that rare meteorological conditions could ionize the air, producing faint glows that resemble floating lights. Others note that the lights often appear in locations where no human activity is present, and at times when atmospheric conditions do not favor such occurrences. How then can one reconcile the natural and the anecdotal, the documented and the reported? The human element intensifies the intrigue. Many who report seeing the Vil light describe feelings of unease, sorrow, or even a sense of presence, as if the light is watching, remembering, or guiding. Could these responses be tied to the history embedded in the land, a collective memory of trauma imprinted upon both the environment and those who enter it? Or are they psychological artifacts, projections of our own fascination with the Civil War and the lives lost there either way? The phenomenon continues to draw historians, paranormal researchers and curious travelers, each hoping to glimpse, record, or understand the fleeting glow. Speculation ranges from the mundane to the extraordinary. Some suggest hidden fires from residual underground coal seams or marsh gases could account for transient lights. Others argue for the possibility of electrical anomalies or piezoelectric effects caused by stress in the geological strata. And then there are those who propose a more metaphysical interpretation that the Vil light represents the restless energy of soldiers who fell in battle, a luminous echo of fear, courage, and loss that continues to roam the fields. None of these theories can be definitively proven, and each invites further observation, reflection, and study. The Vil light remains a mystery precisely because it is ephemeral and inconsistent, appearing at different times, intensities, and locations. Its unpredictability challenges scientific explanation and invites stories, anecdotes, and theories that blend history, human perception, and environmental factors. Could it be a phenomenon that straddles multiple domains, part science, part psychology, and part something that resists classification entirely? Or is it a reminder of how places steeped in human conflict can retain an almost tangible memory, lingering long after the last cannon has fallen silent as we walk the misted fields? Tracing the paths of troops and the scars of battle, the Vil light serves as both a guide and a question, a phenomenon that illuminates as much as it obscures. And so we are left to wonder, as observers across generations have wondered before us. What is the true origin of this elusive glow, and what secrets, if any, does it still carry from the darkest hours of one of America's bloodiest conflicts? From the flickering glows over Perryville's, the vanishing of the USS Patapsco haunted fields. Our journey now turns to the waters of the Chesapeake Bay and the coastal rivers of Virginia, where another mystery of the Civil War remains submerged and elusive. The disappearance of the USS Patapsco. Picture the cold, grey waters of Hampton Roads, waves lapping softly against the mudflats, the horizon shrouded in fog. It was on these waterways that the Union's ironclad Monitor, a vessel built for both resilience and firepower, patrolled with a mission as vital as it was perilous. Yet despite its prominence, the Papsko vanished into the annals of history in a way that continues to provoke both fascination and speculation. The USS Padupskov, a Payet-class ironclad Monitor, had distinguished itself in several engagements, from the bombardments of Charleston to the protection of Union supply lines. Its armored hull and rotating turret represented cutting-edge naval technology, a testament to ingenuity amidst the chaos of war. But in January 1865, during an expedition off the coast of Charleston, the ship encountered a Confederate torpedo, or what we would now call a naval mine. The explosion was devastating, tearing through the ironclad's hull and sending shockwaves through its crew. Reports confirm that nearly half of those aboard were lost. Yet the precise details of the vessel's final moments remain shrouded in uncertainty. Eyewitness accounts describe the Papsko listing heavily, smoke and flame consuming the deck, sailors thrown into the freezing waters. The chaos of the sinking, combined with conflicting reports, has left historians with incomplete records. Some survivors claimed that the ironclad had broken apart suddenly, while others recounted that it had slowly descended, caught between the surface and the riverbed. How much of the story is fact, and how much is shaped by the trauma and confusion of the moment? Even official logs contain gaps, with entries abruptly ending as the ship disappeared beneath the waves, leaving questions that would linger for generations. The exact resting place of the Papsko remains unverified, despite multiple searches and salvage attempts over the years. Technological advances in sonar and underwater archaeology have revealed wreckage in the general area, but nothing conclusively identified as the ironclad itself. Some theorists propose that strong currents and shifting sediments have buried it far from the reported explosion site, while others suggest that remnants may have been salvaged or displaced in the decades following the war. Could the ship's remains be scattered across the seabed, hidden from view by layers of silt and sand? Or has time and tide claimed them entirely? Beyond the physical disappearance lies a human dimension that adds both poignancy and intrigue. Nearly 100 men perished with the ship, and countless families awaited word that never came. The loss of the Papsko was not just a tactical blow, but a psychological one, emblematic of the uncertainty and peril inherent in naval warfare during the Civil War. Did the manner of the ship sinking reveal flaws in Union strategies for mine detection and coastal patrols, or was it an unavoidable tragedy? A stark reminder of the hazards faced by sailors in ironclads that were revolutionary yet still vulnerable. Speculation has extended into more enigmatic realms. Could the ship have been carrying undisclosed supplies, classified intelligence, or sensitive communications, making its disappearance more than a simple accident? Some fringe theories suggest that parts of the vessel or its cargo might have been recovered in secret, either by Confederate sympathizers or opportunistic salvagers, leaving the historical record deliberately incomplete. While there is no conclusive evidence to support such claims, the very persistence of these theories underscores the enduring mystery surrounding the Papsko. The waters where the Patapsko sank remain deceptively calm, concealing the turbulence of history beneath. Diverse researchers and enthusiasts return repeatedly, scanning the seabed, piecing together fragments of iron, timber, and cannon shot, seeking to illuminate a story that the waves have long hidden. Yet every expedition only deepens the enigma, revealing debris that may belong to the ship or may belong to other wrecks entirely, intermingled over decades of storms, tides, and sediment shifts. The story of the USS Papsko is in essence a reminder of the fragile line between visibility and disappearance in history. A vessel that once projected strength and resilience now exists primarily in accounts, fragmented reports, and the questions that echo across the waters it once patrolled. And so we are left to wonder, where does the Patapsco truly rest? What secrets lie within its sunken hull, and what stories remain untold, suspended beneath the Chesapeake waves, waiting for the curious to uncover them from the depths? The curse of the Confederate White House of Chesapeake waters and the silent resting place of ironclads. Our journey returns to the heart of the Confederacy, to a grand estate whose walls witnessed power, ambition, and whispered secrets. The so-called Confederate White House, the Richmond home of Jefferson Davis during the Civil War. Picture a sprawling mansion, stately columns rising above manicured gardens, windows reflecting the dim afternoon light. Within, the atmosphere was thick with political urgency, private councils, and the heavy burden of leadership. Yet over the years, the estate has acquired a reputation that transcends history, a whispered curse, a legacy of misfortune that seems to haunt all who enter. The Confederate White House, formerly the Executive Mansion in Richmond, was the operational and symbolic center of the Confederacy. Davis and his family resided there amidst the turmoil of war, navigating threats from advancing Union forces and the constant tension of governance under siege. Historical records recount the mansion as a place of strategic decision-making, with letters, military maps, and correspondence filling its rooms. Yet alongside these documented realities, stories emerged of unexplained cold drafts, sudden shadows, and lights flickering in unoccupied rooms. Could these phenomena be mere coincidence, or do they hint at something lingering from a past steeped in anxiety, sacrifice, and fear? Eyewitness accounts over decades have contributed to the mansion's enigmatic reputation. Staff, visitors, and historians alike have reported fleeting glimpses of figures moving where no one should be, distant footsteps echoing along empty hallways, and a sense of presence that defies rational explanation. Some suggest that the curse is tied to the deaths and misfortunes that befell Davis's inner circle, the collapse of the Confederacy, the imprisonment of key officials, and the untimely deaths of family members. Could the weight of despair, trauma, and history imprint itself upon a building, echoing through time as subtle but persistent disturbances? Historical documentation confirms the intense human drama that unfolded within the mansion. Decisions made here shaped the lives of thousands and determined the fates of states. Yet the mansion also bore witness to personal tragedies. Jefferson Davis's children suffered illness and death, while Davis himself endured capture, exile, and the loss of his cause. Might these intense human experiences have left an unseen residue, a lingering energy that manifests as the so-called curse? Or is the phenomenon rooted in the mansion's architectural and environmental peculiarities, with its creaking floors, hidden passages, and interplay of light and shadow, creating illusions that generations of observers have interpreted as supernatural? Speculation about the curse extends beyond natural or structural explanations. Some suggest that those who served or visited the mansion were unconsciously affected by the weight of history, projecting their anxieties onto ordinary occurrences. Others propose a more metaphysical interpretation, that the mansion, as a site of extraordinary stress and historical significance, somehow retained echoes of the past, a subtle reflection of collective grief and conflict. Could there be a link between the mansion's physical space and the psychological resonance of those who lived and worked there, creating a cycle of experience that feels inexplicably haunting? Despite extensive documentation and preservation, the mansion retains elements that fuel intrigue. Hidden chambers, long-forgotten storage rooms, and architectural idiosyncrasies may have contributed to reports of unexplained noises or sightings. Yet even with careful study, the more ephemeral aspects, the flickering lights, the sense of movement, the inexplicable cold spots, resist definitive explanation. Are these manifestations merely coincidences, products of imagination, or something subtler, a presence rooted in the mansion's history that refuses to be dismissed. The curse of the Confederate White House is in many ways a story of intersection, where human tragedy meets architectural space, where history meets perception, and where the unresolved mysteries of the past linger in the present. It invites us to consider the ways in which buildings like artifacts or documents can carry memory beyond the purely material, becoming vessels for stories, fears, and unanswered questions. Could this mansion, so central to the Confederacy's narrative, hold secrets that remain invisible yet palpable to those sensitive to the weight of its past as we walk its halls in thought, imagining the decisions, fears, and private moments that once filled them? The Confederate White House stands not merely as a relic of history, but as a repository of human experience. And so we are left to wonder what truths, whispers, or energies remain embedded in its walls, waiting for discovery, acknowledgement, or understanding. The curse, whether literal or symbolic, continues to challenge our perceptions of history and the places that bear its mark. From the shadows of haunted mansions, our journey moves to the blood-soaked fields of the Battle of Shiloh's Angel's Glow, Tennessee, where the clash of armies gave rise to a phenomenon both eerie and miraculous. The Angel's Glow at the Battle of Shiloh. Picture the sun setting over rolling fields, cannon smoke lingering like a grey mist, and the cries of the wounded carried on a cold April breeze. Amidst the chaos of the battlefield, a mysterious light seemed to appear around some of the soldiers' injuries, an ethereal luminescence that survivors would later describe as faintly glowing from the wounds themselves. Could this have been nature's strange mercy, a moment of wonder amidst the devastation? Or is there something more profound hidden within the legend? The Battle of Shiloh, fought on April 6th to 7th, 1862, was one of the bloodiest confrontations of the Civil War. Thousands fell on both sides, leaving fields strewn with the wounded and dying. Amid the suffering, some soldiers reported that their comrades' injuries emitted a soft bluish glow during the night. Those touched by the light often experienced unexpectedly swift recoveries, while others nearby, lacking the glow, succumbed to infections. Eyewitness accounts vary, but the consistency of these reports across multiple units, locations, and ranks has fascinated historians and medical researchers alike. Was it coincidence, an optical illusion, or something more extraordinary? Medical explanations have sought to rationalize the phenomenon. Some researchers suggest that certain bacteria, later identified as photoabdus might have been present in the soil where the wounded lay, generating bioluminescent reactions on infected wounds. Strikingly, these bacteria produce substances with antibacterial properties, which could explain why those with glowing wounds sometimes recovered against the odds. Could the glow then have been a natural antiseptic hidden in the mud and microbes of a Tennessee field, working silently to save lives? Yet, the legend carries elements that challenge strict scientific interpretation. Soldiers described a sense of calm surrounding the glowing wounds, a subtle warmth or comforting presence that defied clinical explanation. Was this merely a psychological response? A mind seeking solace amidst horror? Or might there have been an energy, a force, or a coincidence of conditions that science can only partially explain? Some speculate that the combination of cold night air, swampy soil, and human trauma may have created unique circumstances that allowed this phenomenon to manifest in ways that contemporary observers could only interpret as miraculous. The battlefield itself adds context to the mystery. Shiloh's landscape, wooded ridges, marshy lowlands, and winding creeks provided the perfect environment for bacteria to thrive, for fog and light to mingle, and for perception to blend with the extraordinary. Soldiers and medics working through the night would have encountered shadows, glimmers, and movements that seem subtle now, but were striking under conditions of fatigue and fear. Could the Angel's Glow have been a fleeting intersection of biology, environment, and human observation, a phenomenon that will likely never be reproduced, but continues to intrigue. The human response amplifies the story. Letters, diaries, and post-war recollections convey awe and wonder, describing soldiers tending glowing comrades with reverence, sometimes whispering prayers or marveling at the inexplicable. Some wrote that it was as if an unseen presence was protecting the wounded, a small mercy amidst overwhelming carnage. Were these perceptions rooted in spiritual belief, hope in the face of death, or a genuine recognition of something not yet understood? Speculative theories abound, from the metaphysical to the scientific. Could the glow have been a sign of divine intervention, an angelic presence, or the battlefield's own consciousness manifesting in light? Or is it more likely a rare interaction of environmental bacteria, chemical reactions, and human physiology? The fact that we cannot replicate the conditions exactly leaves the phenomenon suspended between legend and science, a liminal space where history, nature, and perception converge. The angel's glow endures because it bridges the tangible and the mysterious. It reminds us that even amidst the horrors of Shiloh, amid fire, blood, and loss, nature and circumstance sometimes create moments of inexplicable wonder. Could it be that the glow preserved more than life, that it preserved hope and courage in those darkest hours? And as we walk the fields today, reflecting on the echoes of battle, we are left to wonder what secrets of the human body, the battlefield, or perhaps the unseen forces around us might still be waiting to reveal themselves, faintly glowing to those who pause long enough to notice. The Lost Diary of Jefferson Davis, from the faint luminescence of Shiloh's battlefield. Our journey returns to the corridors of power, to the life and mind of Jefferson Davis, the President of the Confederate States. Imagine the executive mansion in Richmond, dimly lit by the glow of oil lamps, papers scattered across the desk, and the weight of a crumbling nation pressing on its leader. Amidst the turmoil of war, Davis meticulously recorded thoughts, decisions, and private reflections, intending to preserve a first-hand account of the Confederacy's struggles. Yet today, the diary that could have offered unparalleled insight into the heart of the Confederacy is missing, leaving historians and enthusiasts with tantalizing questions about what secrets, confessions, or revelations may have been lost to time. Jefferson Davis was known to be a disciplined and methodical chronicler. His official correspondences, public speeches, and post-war memoirs provide a fragmented view of his leadership, but they cannot capture the intimate and unfiltered nature of personal diary entries. Contemporaneous accounts suggest that Davis maintained private journals throughout the Civil War, recording not only political strategies and military reports, but also personal fears, doubts, and observations about the people and events shaping his nation. What might these pages have revealed about his inner thoughts during the darkest hours of the conflict, or about the private moments that official history has never disclosed? Historical records confirm that in April 1865, as Union forces advanced on Richmond, Davis was forced to flee the capital with his cabinet and family. Amid the chaos, documents were hastily packed, moved, or destroyed to prevent capture by Union troops. Some accounts suggest that the diary may have been left behind in a secure location, lost during flight, or intentionally hidden by aides or family members. Others propose that it may have been captured, later entering private hands, only to vanish from historical record. Could the diary have survived in secret, waiting unnoticed in an attic, archive, or private collection, its contents inaccessible to the public for over a century? The mystery is compounded by inconsistencies in the surviving documentation. Scholars point to gaps in the archival record, letters referencing Davis's personal reflections that cannot be traced to extant materials, and rumors circulating soon after the war about a hidden diary that contained sensitive or potentially damaging revelations. Was this a deliberate act of preservation intended to protect Davis's reputation? Or was it simply a casualty of the frantic retreat and the disarray of a collapsing government? And if the diary does survive somewhere, what truths or confessions might it contain that challenge our understanding of the Confederacy and its president's speculative theories abound, bridging the historical and the improbable? Some suggest that the diary could contain intimate accounts of Confederate strategy, secret communications with foreign powers, or personal critiques of generals and politicians which might explain why it disappeared. Others hint at more mysterious possibilities, coded entries, hidden messages within the text, or even references to events or locations that remain unexplained. Could there be elements of the diary that, if found, would illuminate not only the political decisions of Davis, but also the private moral and ethical struggles that accompanied his leadership? The diary's disappearance also raises questions about human behavior during moments of crisis. Davis's aides and family were faced with impossible choices: what to save, what to destroy, and how to protect their leader legacy. Could the act of hiding or losing the diary have been a deliberate attempt to control history, a conscious shaping of narrative that left posterity without an unfiltered voice? Or was it an unfortunate accident, the result of hurried retreat, lost trunks, and the chaos of war? Each possibility carries implications not only for what we know about Davis, but for how history itself is recorded and preserved. Even today, the lost diary holds a magnetic pull. Historians, collectors, and treasure hunters have long speculated about its existence, tracing leads through letters, auction records, and private collections. Some insist that fragments may have surfaced in obscure archives or private holdings, yet verification remains elusive. Could the diary's absence be a lesson in the fragility of historical memory, a reminder that even the most meticulous records can vanish, leaving behind only hints and echoes? The mystery of Jefferson Davis's lost diary endures because it occupies a liminal space between what we know and what might have been. It invites us to imagine the intimate thoughts of a leader, navigating impossible circumstances, the personal reflections erased or hidden from history, and the questions that remain unanswered. In its absence, we are left to wonder what insights, confessions, or observations might it contain quietly awaiting discovery. And how might a single missing volume alter our understanding of one of the most tumultuous periods in American history? The diary remains a shadow on the landscape of memory, a silent witness to the decisions, fears, and humanity of Jefferson Davis, waiting for the day it might finally emerge, or perhaps forever remaining a secret lost to time. From the disappearance of the Confederate ironclad, CSS Texas, the shadowed halls of Richmond, and the private reflections of Jefferson Davis, we now turn to the restless waters of the Gulf Coast, where one of the Confederacy's most formidable warships vanished into history. The CSS Texas. Picture the coastal waters of Galveston and the Gulf of Mexico in the final months of the Civil War. Dark, churning waves lapping against wooden piers, salt-laden air mixing with the smoke of distant cannon fire, and the faint outline of a sleek, ironclad monitor cutting through the horizon. Built for both speed and resilience, the Texas was intended as a symbol of Confederate naval ingenuity, yet its fate remains one of the most enduring maritime mysteries of the Civil War. The CSS Texas, part of the Confederate ironclad program, was constructed in the shipyards of Galveston and other Gulf ports, designed to defend key harbors and waterways from Union incursions. Its armored hull, reinforced with iron plating and powerful artillery, made it a formidable opponent capable of withstanding cannon fire that would destroy traditional wooden vessels. Historical records detail its commissioning and limited engagements, including patrols along the Gulf Coast and skirmishes aimed at safeguarding vital supply lines. Yet despite these records, the ship effectively disappears from documentation after the Confederacy's collapse, leaving a trail of speculation that stretches over a century. Eyewitness accounts from sailors, officers, and local observers offer tantalizing yet conflicting clues. Some report that the Texas was intentionally scuttled in shallow waters to prevent capture by advancing Union forces. Others suggest that it was towed away under the cover of darkness, perhaps hidden in an obscure inlet or river mouth where it might have been dismantled or repurposed in secret. Could the ship have been deliberately concealed either to preserve Confederate assets or as part of an elaborate escape plan for its officers and valuable materials? The ambiguity of the historical record ensures that the story is as much legend as it is fact. The disappearance is made more intriguing by reports of later sightings and rumors. In the decades following the war, fishermen and coastal residents occasionally claimed to see a ghostly ironclad silhouette in the Gulf fog, moving silently across the waters at night. These accounts, though anecdotal, reinforced the mystique surrounding the Texas. Could remnants of the ship have lingered, partially submerged, becoming both a literal and figurative ghost of the Confederacy? Some theories even suggest that valuable equipment, cannons or records, might have been removed prior to scuttling, leaving the vessel a hollow shell and obscuring its true purpose or final disposition. Maritime archaeology has explored possible resting places for the Texas, scanning rivers, bays, and coastal inlets with sonar and other modern equipment. While some wreckage believed to be Confederate in origin has been identified, no conclusive evidence confirms the location of the Texas. Natural factors such as shifting sands, hurricanes, and sediment deposits may have hidden the ironclad beyond recognition. Or perhaps it was dismantled or salvaged soon after the war. Could the very environment that protected the Gulf Coast also serve as a keeper of secrets? Concealing one of the Civil War's lost ironclads from history, speculation extends even further, suggesting strategic or clandestine motives for the disappearance. Some historians argue that Confederate officials may have intended to preserve the ship for future use, or to sell it clandestinely to foreign powers sympathetic to the Confederate cause. Others hint at a more symbolic loss. The Texas, like the Confederacy itself, vanished in a mixture of fire, flood, and misdirection, leaving only traces of its presence in eyewitness reports and scattered documents. The absence of definitive records allows imagination to fill in the gaps, yet the mystery resists final resolution. The story of the CSS Texas is emblematic of the Civil War's unresolved naval history, a reminder that even ironclad vessels designed to resist destruction can disappear under the forces of time, tide, and human intention. Its disappearance challenges historians, archaeologists, and enthusiasts to reconcile fact with speculation, to consider the interplay between recorded history and the possibilities that elude documentation. Could the ship's final location remain buried beneath centuries of sediment, waiting to be uncovered by a patient observer, or is it a casualty of human forgetfulness erased from the record by chaos and retreat? The mystery of the CSS Texas persists because it sits at the intersection of engineering, warfare, and human uncertainty. The ironclad was not merely a machine of war. It was a symbol of a nation in its last desperate months, an embodiment of ingenuity, hope, and hubris. And so we are left to wonder, where did the Texas truly end its journey? And what secrets might still lie within its armored hull, hidden beneath the Gulf waters, waiting for discovery? The ironclad remains a silent enigma, a submerged witness to a war that reshaped a nation and to a history that refuses to be fully told. From the restless waters where the CSS Texas vanished, we, the unknown spy at Antietam, now move inland to the rolling hills and sun-dappled fields of Maryland, where one of the bloodiest battles of the Civil War unfolded, Antietam. The morning air is thick with fog, drifting over cornfields and orchards, carrying the faint scent of smoke from distant cannon fire. The sun's first rays struggled to penetrate the haze, illuminating broken fences, abandoned muskets, and the trampled earth of the battlefield. Amid this chaotic scene, another mystery quietly persisted, one that would linger long after the guns fell silent. The identity of a shadowy figure, an unknown spy who moved unseen, gathering intelligence that could have altered the course of the battle. The Battle of Antietam, fought on September 17, 1862, remains notorious for its staggering casualties, with tens of thousands of soldiers wounded, missing, or dead in a single day. While historians have meticulously reconstructed troop movements and strategies, the presence of espionage complicates the picture. Reports from both Union and Confederate sources suggest that information was intercepted and transmitted with uncanny precision, allowing for tactical maneuvers that sometimes seem too calculated to be coincidental. Yet the origin of this intelligence, who gathered it, how, and with what intentions, remains an enigma. Contemporaneous accounts describe individuals who appeared and disappeared in moments of crisis, carrying dispatches, observing troop positions, and slipping through lines with uncanny ease. Some Union officers noted the sudden appearance of accurate reports regarding Confederate positions, yet no record of the messengers' identities survives. Confederate accounts, too, hint at an unseen presence, a source of information that occasionally anticipated Union movements, sowing confusion and uncertainty. Could there have been a single operative working across lines? Or was this the work of multiple clandestine agents coordinating in secret? The historical record provides tantalizing fragments. Letters and diaries reference mysterious couriers and unidentified informants, but names are omitted, details are vague, and in some cases accounts contradict one another. Scholars have speculated that the spy may have been a local resident, intimately familiar with the terrain, or a soldier using disguise and cunning to move undetected. Others suggest that networks of sympathizers, possibly comprising civilians, enslaved people, or itinerant laborers, may have provided critical information to one side or the other. Yet, despite extensive research, no definitive identity has been confirmed. Speculative theories add layers of intrigue. Could the spy have been someone close to commanding officers, moving within their circles unnoticed, recording decisions and relaying them to the enemy? Or might the operative have been a double agent, shifting allegiances with careful timing to influence outcomes on both sides? Some historians have even proposed that intelligence from this unknown source may have played a role in limiting Confederate advances, potentially preventing a far greater disaster for Union forces. The idea that a single individual hidden in plain sight could have shaped the battlefield without leaving a trace only deepens the mystery. The landscape itself seems to echo this secrecy. Dense woods, steep ridges, and narrow creeks offered natural concealment, while the fog and smoke of battle provided cover for unseen observers. Could the very terrain, combined with the confusion of combat, have allowed a skilled operative to move freely, unnoticed by the thousands of soldiers and officers on both sides? The intersection of human cunning and environmental advantage creates a scenario where a spy could plausibly operate with impunity, leaving behind only whispers, fragmented reports, and unanswered questions. Even modern investigations have yielded no conclusive answers. Battlefield archaeology, forensic studies, and historical research have illuminated many aspects of Antietam, but the identity of this unknown spy remains elusive. Was the operative a patriot acting from conviction, a mercenary motivated by profit, or someone compelled by circumstance? And how much of the battle's outcome, small movements of troops, critical delays, or sudden advances, can be attributed to intelligence gathered by a single unrecorded agent? Each possibility invites reflection on the hidden layers of history where decisions are shaped not only by generals and regiments, but also by those who exist in shadow. The mystery of the unknown spy at Antietam endures because it reminds us that even in events meticulously documented, there are elements that escape the historical record. In the quiet spaces between written orders, in the fog of war, and the uncertainty of human perception, there exist gaps where secrets flourish. The spy's identity, motives, and ultimate fate remain lost to time. Yet the subtle echoes of their work linger in the patterns of the battle. Could the truth one day emerge from a forgotten letter, an unexamined diary, or the careful piecing together of long overlooked clues? Or is this shadow destined to remain part of Antietam's enduring enigma, a ghostly figure in a landscape already haunted by the magnitude of human loss? As we stand on these fields today, imagining the hidden movements, whispered communications, and fleeting glimpses that shaped a pivotal moment in history, we are left to wonder who was the unknown spy, and what unseen hand did they play in the unfolding of one of America's bloodiest days? The answer remains as obscured as the morning fog, suspended in time, waiting for discovery, or perhaps destined to remain forever a secret of the battlefield. From the fog-laden fields of the mystery of the Andersonville Raiders' gold antietam, where secrets moved unseen across the battlefield, we journey south to the oppressive heat and barbed confines of Andersonville, Georgia. The infamous Confederate prison, formerly known as Camp Sumter, sprawled across a desolate landscape, its stockades cutting sharply into the Georgia pine and dirt. Here the human toll was staggering. Thousands of Union soldiers imprisoned, starved, and left to endure the harsh realities of war. Yet amid the despair and suffering, a darker mystery emerged, one that has haunted historians for generations: the disappearance of gold taken by the prisoners known as the Andersonville Raiders. The Raiders were a group of inmates who, exploiting their position within the camp, seized valuables from their fellow prisoners. Eyewitness accounts describe the meticulous way in which these men operated, quietly rifling through personal effects, hiding loot in secret caches, and evading both the watchful eyes of guards and the moral scrutiny of their peers. Coins, jewelry, and even small amounts of cash found their way into the raiders' hidden stores. Yet not all of it was ever recovered. What became of the gold and what secrets did it carry remains a tantalizing question. Contemporary records confirm the existence of these raids, but details are frustratingly sparse. Guard reports noted missing items, whispered accusations, and on rare occasions, recovered coins. Yet the majority of the stolen goods vanished without a trace. Survivors recounted rumors of stashes buried near the camp perimeter, hidden beneath the soft Georgia soil, or concealed in hollow logs and abandoned structures. Some speculated that the gold was spirited away during prisoner transfers or smuggled out of the camp entirely. Could the raiders have deliberately created a network of caches, each hidden to mislead pursuers, or was much of the treasure quietly spent or lost during the chaotic final months of the war? Speculation stretches even further into the unknown. Some suggest that the gold may have found its way into Confederate hands, sold or traded to fund operations elsewhere, or that it vanished into the wider black market of the collapsing South. Others entertain more improbable theories that the treasure buried beneath the ground for generations remains untouched, waiting for discovery by an intrepid historian or fortune seeker. Could there be clues embedded in obscure diaries, letters, or oral histories that, if decoded, would reveal the hidden caches? And if so, why have so many efforts failed to locate them? The human element deepens the mystery. The Andersonville Raiders were prisoners themselves, bound by the same constraints as their victims, yet driven by a mixture of desperation, cunning, and opportunity. Their actions raise questions about morality under extreme circumstances. Survival versus betrayal, necessity versus greed. Did the gold represent merely material wealth, or did it carry symbolic weight? A tangible claim to power in a place otherwise defined by suffering and deprivation? And how did the social hierarchy among prisoners facilitate or complicate the raiders' operations, allowing them to remain undetected while the camp's administration turned a blind eye? The physical landscape of Andersonville adds another layer of intrigue. Dense woods, swampy patches, and the shifting sands of the prison grounds could easily conceal small caches. While the passage of time and human activity has altered the terrain, hurricanes, floods, and natural erosion may have buried or dispersed remnants of the loot, making it nearly impossible to trace using conventional methods. Could the very environment that magnified human suffering at Andersonville also serve as a silent guardian of its secrets? Preserving the raiders' treasures from discovery for over a century, efforts to solve the mystery have been numerous but inconclusive. Archaeologists, historians, and treasure hunters have scoured the area, guided by fragmented testimonies and partial maps, yet tangible evidence remains elusive. Were the accounts of buried gold exaggerated in the retelling of a prison legend, or does the truth lie hidden beneath layers of earth? Memory and misdirection, and if the treasure does survive, what might its discovery reveal, not only about the raiders, but about the lives, choices, and ingenuity of prisoners struggling to navigate the brutal conditions of Andersonville? The mystery of the Andersonville Raiders' gold endures because it intersects history, human nature, and the unknowable. It challenges us to consider how desperation, opportunity, and secrecy converge under extreme circumstances, creating enigmas that persist long after the events themselves. It reminds us that even in places defined by suffering and despair, human ingenuity leaves traces, whispers, and unanswered questions. And so we are left to wonder where, if anywhere, does the gold lie today? Could it still be waiting beneath the Georgia soil, or has it been scattered beyond recovery, leaving behind only shadows, stories, and the enduring lure of the unknown from the sun-shed grounds of Andersonville, where human suffering and the identity of the angel of the battlefield, secret treasures intertwined? We turned to the smoke-filled fields of battle, where another kind of mystery unfolded, one not of stolen gold, but of a presence both miraculous and enigmatic. Amid the chaos of cannon fire, the cries of the wounded, and the relentless dust of conflict, stories emerged of a figure who moved among the injured, tending to the fallen with a calm efficiency that seemed almost otherworldly. Soldiers whispered her name in awe and gratitude, the angel of the battlefield. The origins of this mysterious figure are traced to various Civil War battles, though she is most famously associated with Antietam, Fredericksburg, and Gettysburg. Eyewitnesses describe a woman, often unassuming in appearance, who appeared suddenly where she was needed most. With a quiet authority, she provided comfort, medical care, and sustenance to soldiers, Union and Confederate alike, seemingly guided by instinct rather than strategy. Some accounts depict her kneeling beside a wounded man in the mud, bandaging his wounds, whispering reassurances, and then vanishing before anyone could ascertain her identity. Others recall glimpses of her moving tirelessly through the carnage, appearing at multiple locations in a single day, as if propelled by some unseen force. Historical records confirm the presence of numerous women, volunteers, and nurses during the Civil War. Yet the elusive angel defies the neat boundaries of documentation. Her actions, noted in letters and diaries, were precise, compassionate, and at times inexplicably timely. How could a single figure navigate such vast and perilous battlefields, consistently arriving at critical moments? Some historians argue that the accounts are exaggerations, the product of soldiers' awe and trauma. Yet the consistency of these reports across different battles and regiments suggests that something extraordinary did occur. The mystery deepens when examining the identities proposed over the years. Some scholars suggest the angel may have been a well-known nurse operating under multiple names, while others speculate she could have been a series of women whose actions were collectively remembered as one figure. Another theory proposes that she was a civilian secretly embedded with armies, motivated by compassion or a personal mission. Yet records of such individuals are sparse and contradictory. Could she have been someone trained in battlefield medicine, or was her knowledge improvised, honed through intuition and necessity? And how did she manage to evade attention from commanding officers, camp authorities, or the curiosity of soldiers eager to uncover her identity? Speculative interpretations venture further, wondering whether the angel's story crossed into legend precisely because it offered hope amidst horror. Some accounts hint at near miraculous timing, appearing when a soldier's life seemed beyond saving, disappearing before recognition, moving unhindered across impossible distances. Could this be coincidence, amplified by human perception under stress, or might there have been a strategic or symbolic purpose behind her movements? In a war defined by strategy, firepower and rigid hierarchies, the angel represents something profoundly different. Spontaneous, compassionate, and ineffably human. The landscapes she traversed contributed to the aura of mystery. Dense forests, rolling hills, and smoke-choked fields provided both cover and challenge. Soldiers remembered her emerging from fog, mist, or the haze of battle, as if conjured by the conflict itself. Her ability to navigate these dangerous environments unscathed added to the perception of her being more than mortal, a spectral figure walking the boundary between life and death. Could geography, chance, and human memory together have created the legend? Or was there an actual individual whose bravery and skill rivaled the chaos surrounding? Her letters from soldiers preserved in archives and private collections provide fragments of her story. A Union private recalled her hands moving swiftly over bandages, her calm voice offering solace, while a Confederate sharpshooter remembered receiving aid from a woman who spoke only in soft, unidentifiable tones. These glimpses, scattered and incomplete, deepened the mystery. The angel existed, yet her identity eluded capture. Was she a single person, multiple figures conflated by memory, or an idealized representation of the many women who quietly shaped the battlefield's history? The enduring appeal of the angel lies not only in her anonymity, but in what she represents: courage, humanity, and the quiet defiance of war's brutality. Her story reminds us that history is often preserved not only in records and reports, but in fleeting moments of mercy, in actions that leave no trace beyond gratitude and memory. Could her identity ever be definitively confirmed? Or is the mystery itself central to her legend, allowing the angel to exist eternally as a symbol of hope amidst devastation? As we reflect on the bloodied fields, the whispered accounts, and the unrecorded acts of care, we are left to ponder. Who was the angel of the battlefield? Was she one remarkable woman, a network of heroes, or something more ethereal, a presence that emerged wherever it was most needed? The answer remains shrouded in time, inviting us to imagine, to honor, and to wonder what other untold stories still linger among the echoes of war. From the whispered legends of the battlefield, the vanishing Confederate printing plates, where courage and compassion intersected in the form of the so-called angel, we now shift to a different kind of Civil War enigma, one forged not in blood or heroism, but in metal and ink. Deep in the Confederate South, in the final desperate months of the conflict, a critical tool of communication and survival disappeared without a trace: the printing plates used to produce Confederate currency. These plates were not mere objects. They represented the lifeblood of a collapsing economy, a tangible symbol of authority, and a means to sustain a nation teetering on the edge of ruin. Their vanishing has puzzled historians for over a century. The plates themselves were masterfully crafted, engraved with intricate designs and delicate details intended to deter counterfeiting. Produced in secret workshops, guarded with vigilance, and transported under the watchful eye of Confederate officials, they were the backbone of Southern finance. Yet as Union forces advanced, capturing cities and supply lines, the fate of these plates became increasingly uncertain. Records show that some were moved, hidden, or destroyed to prevent them from falling into enemy hands, but not all. Some vanished entirely, leaving behind a trail of questions that continues to haunt historians and treasure hunters alike. Eyewitness reports from the period are tantalizing, yet frustratingly incomplete. Confederate officials wrote of last-minute transfers, shipments routed through obscure channels, and secret caches intended to safeguard the plates until the war's end. Union intelligence occasionally noted sightings of shipments or rumors of clandestine operations, yet no concrete evidence emerged. How could such significant objects, metal plates heavy and distinctive, simply disappear? Were they secretly smelted down, hidden in rural properties, or spirited away by individuals with motives that remain obscured? The intrigue deepens when considering who might have had access and motive. Confederate officials and trusted artisans certainly understood the value of the plates, but desperation during the final months of the war created opportunities for theft, deception, and secretive transactions. Could rogue actors, soldiers, bureaucrats, or civilians have seized the plates for personal gain, selling them on the black market or concealing them for future leverage? Or might they have been hidden intentionally, awaiting a return of southern fortunes that never arrived? Speculative theories abound. Some suggest that a portion of the plates may have been smuggled out of the South entirely, carried north or even overseas, hidden until a more favorable time. Others propose that desperate officials destroyed the plates to prevent their misuse, erasing a critical part of the Confederate economy in one calculated move. In rare accounts, whispers persist of hidden vaults concealed beneath plantation homes, barns, or wooded hills, where the plates may still rest, untouched by human hands, for over 150 years. Could these artifacts of finance and power lie buried, waiting to reveal a tangible connection to the Confederate struggle? The mystery is compounded by the nature of the Civil War itself. Communications were fragmented, record-keeping sporadic and chaos pervasive. The plate's disappearance is emblematic of a larger pattern. Objects, information, and even people vanished, leaving gaps in the historical record. How much of what we consider lost was truly lost? And how much remains obscured by the fog of war? Could the very urgency to protect the plates have inadvertently ensured their disappearance, scattering them so effectively that no contemporary observer could trace them? Modern investigations have sought to piece together the story. Archivists have scoured letters, transport logs, and government records. Treasure hunters have searched properties rumored to have concealed these objects, and historians have attempted to reconcile conflicting accounts of movements, shipments, and destructions. Yet despite extensive research, the plates themselves remain unseen, their ultimate fate unresolved. The mystery endures because the plates represent more than metal and design. They embody ambition, survival, and secrecy at a critical juncture in American history. The vanished Confederate printing plates remind us that history is not only shaped by battles and treaties, but also by the ephemeral, often invisible threads that connect human intention, greed, and ingenuity. They invite us to consider the choices of those who sought to preserve wealth, power, and hope in the midst of collapse. And perhaps most provocatively, they leave us with a lingering question. If these plates still exist, hidden in a forgotten cellar, a rural barn, or beneath the soil of the southern landscape, what stories might they tell? Could they reveal not only the mechanics of a lost economy, but also the lives of those who risked everything to protect, steal, or conceal them? In contemplating the vanishing Confederate printing plates, we are drawn into a world where war, secrecy, and human determination intersect. A world in which the truth remains just out of reach, tantalizing and elusive. The mystery persists, waiting for discovery and inviting us to wonder what else might lie hidden in the shadows of history, quietly preserved for those willing to seek it. From the hidden machinations of lost Confederate printing plates, we turn to the waters, the Sultana disaster cover-up of the Mississippi River, where one of the most catastrophic yet little-known tragedies of the Civil War unfolded, the Sultana disaster. On a warm April night in 1865, the steamboat Sultana, swollen far beyond its intended capacity, chugged northward from the devastated South, carrying hundreds of Union soldiers recently released from Confederate prison camps. Its decks groaned under the weight of nearly 2,000 men, many weakened by months of starvation, disease, and exhaustion. What should have been a passage home turned into a nightmarish inferno of fire and water, leaving nearly 1,700 dead in the river's murky currents. Yet the tragedy itself is only part of the story. Whispers of a cover-up have lingered for over 150 years, suggesting that the Sultana's sinking may have concealed darker truths. The steamboat, a proud vessel of the Mississippi Line, was supposed to provide safe passage for returning soldiers. Instead, it became a floating coffin. Survivors recounted the sudden, terrifying eruption of steam boilers, an explosion so powerful that it tore through decks, hurled men into the river, and incinerated clothing and personal effects. Eyewitness reports describe a night of chaos. Desperate soldiers clinging to splintered timbers, screams echoing across the water, and the river itself carrying bodies downstream. It was a disaster of immense scale. Yet strangely, it remained overshadowed in the press and public consciousness, dwarfed by other wartime events, such as Lee's surrender at Appomattox. Official investigations, though conducted, were cursory at best. The steamboat's owners and federal authorities quickly moved to downplay liability, attributing the explosion to negligence or accident. Boiler inspectors, shipwrights, and company officials were questioned, but records are incomplete, contradictory, and in some cases missing entirely. Why many historians ask, did this calamity, deadlier than any single battle of the war, receive so little attention? Could there have been political motivations to suppress the story? A desire to maintain morale in the fragile post-war nation? And if so, to what extent were details deliberately altered, destroyed, or buried? Speculation stretches further. Some researchers suggest that corrupt officials may have had financial incentives to obscure the truth. Overcrowding on the Sultana, it appears, was not purely accidental. Steamboat operators received government payments based on the number of passengers transported. Good greed have played a role in a decision that ultimately cost thousands of lives. Other theories suggest intentional obfuscation of key facts, altered passenger lists, destroyed documents, and inconsistent survivor testimonies, raising the possibility of a deliberate cover-up designed to protect powerful individuals or institutions. The human element adds a haunting dimension. Many of the soldiers aboard had endured unimaginable suffering as prisoners at Andersonville, Cahaba, and other camps. They had survived disease, malnutrition, and abuse, only to meet death in a final, preventable catastrophe. Survivors spoke of loved ones lost, of confusion and terror, and of questions left unanswered by authorities and newspapers alike. Who decided the Sultana's story would be muted, and why did the national conscience allow it to fade into obscurity? Physical evidence offers few clues. The river has shifted, sediment has covered debris, and decades of human activity have altered the Mississippi's course. Occasional relics, fragments of timbers, rusted boiler components, and personal items surface. Yet nothing has conclusively revealed the full circumstances of the explosion. Could there still be submerged remnants that would clarify the disaster hidden beneath layers of silt and time? Or has the river itself, like the steamboat's operators and government officials, quietly swallowed the truth? The Sultana's legacy is not merely the number of lives lost, but the persistent questions that linger. Did bureaucratic negligence, corruption, or deliberate suppression allow one of the worst maritime disasters in American history to remain virtually unknown? How much of what we know is filtered through incomplete records, and how much has been intentionally obscured? And beyond speculation, what can the disaster tell us about the broader moral and political climate of the Civil War's final days? A time when triumph and tragedy coexisted, yet were sometimes concealed for expedience or self-interest. The story of the Sultana reminds us that history is rarely complete, that events can be hidden beneath layers of bureaucracy, fear, or greed. It challenges us to consider how human error, ambition, and secrecy intertwine to produce mysteries that endure long after the fact. And so we are left with a haunting question. What truths about the Sultana disaster still lie submerged not only in the waters of the Mississippi, but in the records, memories, and silences of a nation struggling to reconcile victory with loss? In contemplating the Sultana and the shadows surrounding its fate, we confront the enduring enigma of lives lost, stories untold, and questions unanswered. An invitation to wonder what remains hidden in history's currents, waiting for those willing to search. From the murky waters of the Mississippi and the hidden truths of the Sultana, the mystery of the Fort Pillow Massacre orders disaster, we turn to a fortified position along the bluffs of the Mississippi River, where violence, command, and secrecy converged into one of the Civil War's most controversial episodes, the Fort Pillow Massacre. Perched atop a strategic ridge, Fort Pillow was designed as a bulwark against Union advances into the Confederate heartland. Its timbered walls and earthworks offering protection to a garrison of soldiers, many of them African-American troops serving in the Union Army. On April 12, 1864, the fort became the stage for a tragedy whose precise orchestration remains shrouded in mystery. Eyewitnesses recall a dawn shrouded in fog and tension, the air heavy with anticipation, and the distant thunder of artillery. Confederate forces commanded by Major General Nathan Bedford Forrest descended upon the fort with overwhelming numbers, and the Union defenders, exhausted, outnumbered, and ill-prepared, struggled to hold their positions. Yet it was not merely the assault itself that has haunted historians. It was the disproportionate and deliberate targeting of surrendering soldiers that followed, leading to the deaths of hundreds, particularly among black troops. How could such an atrocity occur with such precision, and more importantly, were explicit orders issued to carry out the massacre? Or did it emerge from the chaos and fervor of battle-conflicting accounts, complicate the search for truth? Union survivors testified to the merciless killing of men attempting to surrender, while some Confederate participants later claimed that no official order for indiscriminate slaughter had been given. Contemporary reports, military dispatches, and newspaper articles offered divergent narratives, often influenced by political agendas, racial bias, or the fog of war itself. Did Forrest explicitly command the massacre, or did lower-ranking officers interpret his aggressive tactics as license to act without restraint? The records frustratingly remain incomplete and, in some cases, deliberately ambiguous. Speculation about the origin of the orders or lack thereof has persisted for generations. Some historians argue that a written directive, now lost, may have instructed Confederate troops to show no quarter, particularly against African-American soldiers, reflecting the pervasive racial attitudes of the time. Others suggest the orders were oral, communicated quickly and verbally, leaving no trace beyond the memories of those present. Could the destruction or disappearance of any written orders have been intentional, a method of shielding commanders from post-war accountability? And if so, what does that say about the intersection of military strategy, morality, and historical record-keeping during the Civil War? The geography and circumstances of Fort Pillow add to the enduring enigma. The fort's location along a bluff made escape difficult and the battle intense. Yet the efficiency with which Confederate forces executed the assault and subsequent killings raises questions. How did they coordinate their actions with such precision, seemingly anticipating the Union defenders' positions and responses? Could these movements have been directed by an unrecorded plan, meticulously crafted, or were they the result of opportunistic decisions under pressure, magnified in the retelling of survivors' eyewitness accounts? While invaluable, also deepened the mystery. Survivors recounted acts of mercy and brutality in equal measure, creating a complex mosaic of human behavior under extreme stress. Some described Confederate soldiers refusing to harm surrendering men, while others testified to systematic executions. How do we reconcile these contradictory narratives? Were there deliberate orders, or was the massacre a tragic convergence of fear, vengeance, and the chaos inherent in combat? And if orders did exist, why do the surviving documents offer only fragmented, often contradictory evidence? The Fort Pillow Massacre remains a stark reminder of the limits of historical certainty. It exposes the fragile boundary between recorded fact and interpretation, between deliberate action and the unintended consequences of violence. For historians, the unanswered questions are as compelling as the documented events themselves. Did the orders exist, and were they concealed? Were the killings an organized strategy or the result of an uncontrolled frenzy? And perhaps most hauntingly, what stories of courage, despair, and humanity have been lost amid the shadows of a massacre whose full truth may never be revealed? The mystery of Fort Pillow challenges us to consider the complexities of war. Not only the physical battles, but the moral, administrative, and human decisions that shape events long after the cannons fall silent. It forces us to confront how memory, documentation, and intent intertwine to produce gaps in understanding. And it compels us to ask what remains hidden in the records, in the accounts of soldiers, and in the spaces between official reports. As we reflect on Fort Pillow, we are left with an open question. Who truly decided the fate of the men within those walls? And why have the details of the orders or their absence remained elusive for more than a century and a half? In pondering these uncertainties, the mystery persists, inviting us to search, to question, and to imagine what other secrets the Civil War's darkest hours may yet conceal. From the shadows of the unexplained disappearance of the Lost Order 191 Fort Pillow and the unanswered questions surrounding command and intent, we turn to a different kind of Civil War enigma, one of strategy, secrecy, and sudden disappearance. In the spring of 1862, as the conflict raged across the divided nation, a single sheet of paper would come to hold immense significance. Special Order 191, issued by Confederate General Robert E. Lee. The order detailed the precise movements of his divided forces in Maryland, a plan that, if intercepted, could and would alter the course of the war. The document itself, known as the Lost Order, became legendary not only for its content, but for the mystery surrounding how it came into Union hands and the questions that linger to this day about its disappearance after it was recovered. The order was a meticulously crafted map and set of instructions directing Confederate units to detach, converge, and strike at key points. Its clarity, its exactitude, was both its strength and its vulnerability. How could such critical information, intended only for the eyes of Lee's generals, find itself lying in the grass? Abandoned and unprotected accounts suggest that on September 13, 1862, near Frederick, Maryland, 3 Union soldiers stumbled upon the paper wrapped around cigars and carelessly dropped, or perhaps intentionally discarded, by a Confederate courier. But the circumstances remain murky. Was it mere accident, human error? Or was there something more deliberate at play? The discovery of the Lost Order provided Union General George B. McClellan with a rare advantage: the opportunity to anticipate Lee's movements and prepare his own army accordingly. Yet McClellan, cautious and methodical by nature, delayed action, allowing Lee to regroup and avoid complete disaster. In the aftermath, the order itself vanished. Some historians suggest it was destroyed to prevent sensitive intelligence from leaking, while others wonder whether it simply disappeared into the chaos of military bureaucracy, lost among reports, dispatches, and personal effects. What is certain is that the original document, the physical evidence of Lee's plan, was never recovered. Only copies and references remain. Speculation about the disappearance has fueled decades of historical debate. Could it have been deliberately removed to shield someone from blame? Was there a deliberate attempt to manipulate the narrative of the campaign to obscure how Union forces obtained the advantage? Some fringe theories even suggest that Confederate agents may have attempted to recover or mislead Union officers, using decoys or false trails to protect Lee's reputation. Yet despite meticulous searches through archives, personal collections, and official reports, no trace of the original order has ever surfaced. The Lost Order's disappearance also raises questions about human fallibility and decision-making in wartime. Could a single piece of paper, carelessly handled or intentionally concealed, alter the course of battles and lives. How much of history hinges on these fragile, tangible artifacts? And how much is shaped by the choices of those who encounter them? Soldiers, couriers, generals, they all moved through the Maryland countryside carrying orders, maps, and intelligence. Yet one sheet became legendary precisely because of its fleeting visibility and ultimate vanishing. Eyewitnesses and contemporaneous reports offer tantalizing yet incomplete clues. Some Union soldiers described picking up the order almost by accident, noting the crispness of the paper and the careful script. Confederate sources acknowledged the loss, but often downplayed its significance, as if to preserve morale or justify subsequent maneuvers. Could the lost order have been intentionally dropped as part of a larger ruse, or was it simply an extraordinary coincidence, a moment of chance that changed history? The lack of definitive answers only deepens the intrigue. Physical evidence has long since faded. The grass where the soldiers allegedly discovered the order is now farmland. Roads have replaced trails, and time has claimed the details of who carried, copied, or disposed of the paper. Yet the narrative endures, a reminder of the fragility of military intelligence and the role of chance in historical events. Was it merely an accident of history that the lost order fell into Union hands? Or were there unseen forces, deliberate or otherwise, shaping its path and disappearance? The lost order of 1911 invites us to consider the precarious nature of war, the thin line between revelation and secrecy, and the enduring questions left by documents that disappear without explanation. Even today, historians and enthusiasts pore over maps, letters, and official reports, hoping for a fragment or clue that might illuminate the truth. And yet, the original document remains elusive, an artifact of strategy, human error, and chance that has vanished into history, leaving only its shadow. As we contemplate the lost order and its disappearance, we are left with an open question. How much of history is written not only by actions and outcomes, but by the fragile, fleeting objects that record them? And if the original document still exists somewhere, hidden in archives, private collections, or forgotten spaces, what truths might it reveal about Lee's intentions, McClellan's hesitations, and the delicate balance of chance and design in one of America's defining conflicts? From the intrigue of lost orders and vanished documents, we, the phantom drummer of Antietam, now move to a different kind of mystery, one that cannot be charted on maps or traced through official reports. It is a phenomenon whispered among soldiers' accounts, passed down in local lore, and recorded in scattered newspaper stories. The phantom drummer of Antietam along the rolling hills, dense woods, and open fields near Sharpsburg, Maryland, the site of the bloodiest single-day battle in American history. Strange sounds have been reported for more than a century. Drums echo across the battlefield, not from the ranks of marching soldiers, but seemingly from nowhere at all. The terrain itself is haunting. Morning fog clings to cornfields and ravines, obscuring the lines where Union and Confederate forces once collided. Sunlight glints off memorial plaques. Yet the memory of the battle lingers not only in monuments, but in the subtle, inexplicable rhythm that some claim to hear. A steady, deliberate drumming punctuating the stillness. Visitors and historians alike have described the sound as faint yet unmistakable, a cadence that rises and falls with no visible drummer, no uniformed figure, no recognizable source. Could it be the wind through hollow logs, the shifting of the earth? Or is there something more enigmatic at work? Historical accounts suggest that soldiers themselves reported similar experiences during the chaos of the battle. Some claim to see a lone drummer far ahead of any formation, keeping a rhythm that seemed both purposeful and otherworldly. Others swore that attempts to approach the figure resulted in it vanishing into the mist, leaving only the echo of drum beats. Modern researchers have attempted to explain the phenomenon scientifically, citing acoustics, echoes across the hilly terrain, and the mind's response to trauma and stress. Yet the consistency and specificity of the reports spanning generations defy easy categorization. The mystery deepens when considering the symbolic role of the drummer. In Civil War battles, drummers were not merely musicians. They communicated orders, coordinated maneuvers, and maintained morale. A phantom drummer then could be interpreted as more than a mere auditory illusion. It becomes a spectral messenger, a reminder of the lives and strategies lost amid the carnage of Antietam. Was this sound a residual echo of the past, somehow imprinted on the landscape, or was it the product of collective memory? A haunting reflection of the chaos and discipline that once dominated the fields. Local lore adds further intrigue. Some accounts suggest that the drumming appears most often at dawn or dusk, times when the boundary between light and shadow is fragile, and the mind is especially attuned to suggestion. Witnesses describe the rhythm as precise, measured, almost impossibly so, echoing the cadence of military drills, yet impossible to reconcile with any surviving regiment's schedule. Could this be a memory encoded in the environment itself? A kind of acoustic haunting, or is there an explanation rooted in phenomena we do not yet understand? Even contemporary visitors report experiences that challenge logic. Hikers, historians, and paranormal enthusiasts have described standing in fields near the Dunker Church or along Bloody Lane only to hear distant drum beats that rise and fade without a source. Instruments are absent. No wind, no mechanical vibration can fully account for the sounds. Some claim the rhythm seems to respond to their movements, accelerating or slowing, as though aware of the living presence in the field. Skeptics argue that trauma, suggestion, and expectation shape these experiences. Yet when multiple independent observers across decades report similar events, the phenomenon retains an unsettling weight. The phantom drummer remains a reminder of the many ways history can linger beyond written records. Battles leave more than bodies and burned fields. They leave impressions on the land, the mind, and perhaps something else entirely. The drumming evokes not only strategy and communication, but memory, grief, and the resonance of human experience. It raises questions about the persistence of sound and memory, and whether the echoes of history can take forms we have yet to fully understand. As we contemplate the rhythmic, disembodied beats that continue to sound over Antietam, one question persists. Are these drum beats merely trickery of the senses? Or do they represent a lingering connection to the men who once marched, fought and fell here? And if they are echoes from the past, what else of history might still whisper in the wind, waiting for those who are willing to listen? From the echoing drum beats of the mystery of the Grey Ghost, John Mosby's Hidden Gold Antietam, we move to another mystery that blends daring deception and disappearance. A tale not of spectral sounds, but of shadowed trails, elusive movements, and the whisper of treasure hidden in the folds of Virginia's countryside. This is the story of John S. Mosby, the Grey Ghost of the Confederacy, and the gold said to have vanished with him, a prize as enigmatic as the man himself. Mosby, famed for his lightning raids and near-mythical ability to appear and vanish at will, operated in the dense forests, rolling hills, and winding valleys of northern Virginia. His name inspired fear and admiration alike, for no Union force seemed able to predict his movements. But beyond the stories of raids and narrow escapes lies a question that has haunted historians and treasure seekers for generations. What became of the gold Mosby was rumored to have accumulated through his clandestine operations. Accounts suggest that Mosby's raiders during the height of their campaigns in 1863 and 1864 seized funds, valuables, and currency from Union convoys and local deposits. Some of these spoils were undoubtedly used to fund operations, supply men, and sustain the guerrilla campaigns. Yet whispers persist of a larger cache hidden intentionally meant to safeguard Confederate wealth from capture. Where this treasure was concealed and whether it remains undiscovered to this day is the heart of the mystery. The terrain Mosby knew so well adds both clarity and confusion to the tale. Thick forests, secluded hollows, and abandoned homesteads provided perfect cover for his raiders, and equally perfect hiding places for gold. Could it be buried beneath an old cabin foundation, concealed in the banks of a forgotten stream, or tucked within a cave yet to be fully explored? Some local lore speaks of hand-dug pits, markers invisible to the casual observer, and the subtle signs of Mosby's secretive work that only someone with intimate knowledge could recognize. Yet despite decades of searching, the treasure has eluded discovery. Historical records lend both intrigue and frustration. Mosby himself, in memoirs and letters, is cryptic regarding the locations of any valuables beyond those immediately required for military operations. Some historians argue that he deliberately obscured details to protect the integrity of his men and avoid the chaos of treasure hunting even in his own time. Others speculate that Mosby may have scattered portions of the gold across multiple locations, a strategy to prevent a single discovery from depriving the Confederacy of resources, or perhaps to mislead anyone who sought to claim it after the war. Speculation has also fueled more adventurous theories. Could Mosby's gold have been moved northward after the Confederacy's collapse, hidden in plain sight within local communities, or smuggled overseas? Some suggest that Union officers aware of Mosby's maneuvers may have recovered part of the cash without leaving records, quietly diverting it while letting legend preserve the aura of the hidden treasure. Folklore intertwines with these conjectures, suggesting coded messages in letters, cryptic landmarks, or even seemingly innocuous buildings as silent witnesses to secrets never revealed. Yet the allure of the treasure is inseparable from the man who claimed it. Mosby's skill in stealth, subterfuge, and speed earned him his nickname and protected his operations for years. That same skill could have ensured that gold he obtained during raids remained inaccessible to pursuers, disappearing from history as completely as the raider himself. Each story, each rumor hints at an intentional vanishing act, not only of wealth, but of knowledge, leaving those who followed with tantalizing clues and unanswered questions. Modern explorers, historians, and treasure hunters continue to seek the gray ghost's fortune. But each attempt returns the seeker empty-handed, and the landscape, unchanged in its deceptive quiet, holds its secrets close. Could the gold have been quietly recovered long ago, lost in the shuffle of post-war chaos, or does it remain buried, concealed, and waiting for discovery in the shadowed forests Mosby knew so well? The very ambiguity of the mystery is part of its power, an invitation to imagine the past in its full uncertainty, and to wonder what stories remain hidden just beneath the surface of what we call history. The legend of Mosby's hidden gold is more than a story of wealth. It is a reflection of the ingenuity, audacity, and enduring elusiveness of the men who shaped the Civil War in its most unpredictable corners. As the forests of northern Virginia sway quietly under the wind, one cannot help but ask, is the treasure still there, invisible to eyes untrained in the ways of the gray ghost? Or has time claimed it, leaving only the myth, the memory, and the unending question of what truly remains hidden? The unidentified dead of Cold Harbor, from tales of elusive treasure and daring raids. We now turn to a somber and haunting mystery, unwritten not in whispers of gold or legend, but in the silence of the earth itself. Cold Harbor, Virginia, a name etched in the memory of the Civil War for the staggering loss of life during the Union assaults of June 1864, is a place where history lingers in ways that the eye cannot always see. Among the fields, scarred by musket fire and artillery, countless soldiers fell, many to remain unnamed and unclaimed, leaving a haunting question. Who are the unidentified dead of Cold Harbor? The landscape is deceptively calm today. Rolling fields stretch under the Virginia sky, dotted with monuments and markers. Yet beneath this serene exterior lie the echoes of chaos and the uncounted tragedies of a battlefield where tens of thousands clashed. Mud-caked trenches, once bristling with soldiers, now lie quiet, and in their depths, long forgotten, may rest men whose names were never recorded, whose identities were lost amid the carnage. How many were buried hastily in mass graves under the smoke and despair of war? And how many remain concealed still, unmarked, their stories unspoken? Contemporary accounts describe the battle as brutal, beyond imagination. Artillery shattered the landscape, musket volleys ran advancing lines, and the cries of the wounded and dying echoed across the fields. In the aftermath, burial parties struggled to manage the dead. Some were identified by uniform, personal effects, or officers' roles, but countless others were not. Records were incomplete, lost, or never created, leaving an enduring shadow over the historical record. What is known, however, is chilling. The vast scale of mortality at Cold Harbor ensured that many graves would be anonymous. A haunting silence amidst the commemorations that came later. Over the years, historians and archaeologists have attempted to locate and study these unmarked graves using modern technology. Ground-penetrating radar, soil analysis, and historical maps to trace where soldiers might have fallen. Yet the results remain fragmentary. Disturbances from farming, construction, and natural erosion have obscured much of the original battlefield. And still, locals and visitors occasionally report inexplicable phenomena. Sudden chills in the air, the faint echo of boots on soft ground, or fleeting glimpses of figures moving across the fields where no one stands. Could these be the lingering traces of the dead, a residual imprint left by trauma and history itself? The mystery deepens when one considers the human stories lost with these soldiers. Each unidentified grave represents a life cut short, a family unaware of its fate, a name unspoken in the pages of history. Could some of the unidentified have been young, recruits pressed into service with no knowledge of the wars? Brutality, or veterans returning to battle after previous wounds whose final moments were recorded only by the chaos surrounding them? The anonymity of these dead challenges our understanding of memory and history, reminding us that the Civil War's cost was measured not only in numbers, but in the eraser of identities. Speculative theories and folklore add another layer of intrigue. Some suggest that efforts were made at times to hide or obscure certain burials, whether for political reasons, military secrecy, or expedience. Others propose that unmarked graves may contain not only soldiers, but also camp followers, escaped prisoners, or unknown civilians caught in the conflict. Each possibility paints a slightly different portrait of the battlefield, one in which the known and the unknown coexist in a delicate, often disturbing balance. Visitors to Cold Harbor today often sense the weight of this ambiguity. The markers and memorials offer names, dates, and regiments, yet the silent expanses between them hint at lives left unrecorded. Standing in the midst of these fields, one can almost hear the whispers of the past, urging remembrance of those who cannot speak for themselves. Their anonymity becomes a narrative in itself, an enduring question. How do we honor lives lost when their identities remain hidden? And how do we reconcile the scale of tragedy with the fragments that survive in archives and artifacts? The unidentified dead of Cold Harbor embody the profound and enduring mysteries of war. Their absence from records is not merely a gap in documentation. It is a silence that speaks to the human cost of conflict, the fragility of memory, and the persistence of history in ways that are sometimes visible, sometimes not. As the sun sets over the fields, casting long shadows across earth that once ran red, one is left to ponder. How many remain buried, nameless and unseen? And what might still be uncovered if we listen closely to the whispers of the land itself? As the echoes of battle fade, the vanished Confederate Red Hill papers from Cold Harbor, leaving behind fields dotted with memorials and the unmarked graves of countless soldiers. Another quieter mystery emerges from the annals of the Civil War. Tucked away in the rolling hills of Virginia, near a plantation known as Red Hill, There lies a story of documents whose existence was as fleeting as it was consequential. The so-called Red Hill Papers. These papers, rumored to contain sensitive Confederate correspondence and possibly secret strategies, vanished without a trace, leaving historians and collectors alike to wonder what secrets were lost forever. The Red Hill estate itself stands as a silent witness to history. Weathered brick walls shaded by towering oaks and narrow creaking hallways evoke a time when every room held the potential for espionage and intrigue. It was here, according to fragmentary accounts, that Confederate officials and trusted aides stored correspondence critical to the war effort. Yet the papers disappeared, stolen, hidden, or simply destroyed, and no definitive record exists of their contents. Was it merely the chaos of the closing days of the Confederacy that swallowed them, or was there a deliberate act to conceal something too sensitive to survive the war contemporary? Letters and diaries hint at their importance. Some describe plans for troop movements. Others refer to financial arrangements and internal communications that, if intercepted by Union forces, could have had serious consequences. Yet the Red Hill Papers are never seen again in official archives. Theories abound. Perhaps they were carried off by Confederate couriers, fleeing Union advances, or hidden in the dense forests nearby, awaiting a retrieval that never came. Could they have been deliberately destroyed to prevent the information from falling into enemy hands? Or more tantalizingly, might they have contained information that could have rewritten certain understandings of the Confederacy's final strategies? The mystery deepens when considering the human element. Those who might have known the papers' whereabouts, family members, aides, or soldiers assigned to guard them, left behind no conclusive testimony. Some perished during the war, others relocated, and records that might have illuminated the story were lost in fires, confiscations, and the general chaos of defeat. The very absence of testimony becomes part of the puzzle, prompting questions about loyalty, secrecy, and survival. Did someone profit from their disappearance? Were the papers meant to vanish entirely, ensuring that knowledge was confined to memory rather than ink and parchment? Over the decades, collectors and historians have searched tirelessly. Hidden compartments in old desks, false bottoms of trunks, and forgotten boxes in attics have yielded tantalizing clues. A fragment of a letter here, a signature there, but never the complete collection. Some speculate that portions may have made their way into private collections, unrecognized, misfiled, or deliberately concealed. Others propose that the Red Hill Papers were never a single cache, but a series of documents dispersed over time, each vanishing under different circumstances, compounding the enigma. Speculative theories extend even further. Could the papers have contained information regarding clandestine Confederate alliances, plans to move valuables out of the South, or correspondence with figures whose involvement was deliberately erased from public knowledge? There is no proof, yet the gaps in the historical record allow such possibilities to persist, echoing the uncertainty that surrounds so many Civil War mysteries. And as with so many artifacts lost to time, the lack of evidence becomes itself a kind of evidence, a silent testament to the fragility of history and the many layers of secrecy that war imposes. Visiting Red Hill today, one is struck by the stillness. The estate has been preserved, yet the rooms feel hollow, their walls seemingly listening for whispers long gone. The trees sway gently in the breeze, their shadows stretching across lawns where papers may have once changed hands. And one cannot help but imagine a servant carrying a bundle of documents down a hidden path, or a courier riding away into the night with knowledge that would never again be traced. What secrets might have survived in memory alone, and what might have been irrevocably lost to time? The Red Hill Papers, whether myth or reality, symbolize a deeper truth about history. It is rarely complete, often fragmented, and always shaped by the lives that intersect with it. Their disappearance invites reflection not only on what was contained in ink and parchment, but also on the fragility of memory and record in the midst of chaos. As the sun sets over the rolling hills of Virginia, casting long shadows across the grounds, the questions linger. Where did the papers go, and what truths lie buried in their absence? Are they lost forever, or might they one day re-emerge to illuminate a hidden chapter of the Civil War, even now? As Red Hill stands quiet and the war's echoes fade into history, the mystery of the vanished Confederate papers remains. Their story is one of absence as much as presence, a testament to the shadows that war casts not only across the battlefield, but across memory, records, and the pages of history itself. As the shadows lengthen over the dense forests and rolling hills surrounding Chickamauga, the phantom train of Chickamauga, Georgia, one can almost hear the distant echoes of battle, the roar of cannon, the shouted commands, and the steady rhythm of horses' hooves across uneven terrain. Amid these familiar sounds of history, another more elusive presence has been whispered about for over a century: the phantom train of Chickamauga. Unlike the clearly documented movements of troops and supplies, this spectral locomotive is said to appear without warning, its darkened silhouette gliding along rails that seem to shimmer with an unearthly light, vanishing before any could confirm its passage. The historical backdrop is indisputable. The Battle of Chickamauga, fought in September 1863, was one of the bloodiest clashes of the Civil War, leaving thousands dead or wounded, and entire units scattered across the unforgiving landscape. Confederate and Union forces alike relied heavily on trains to transport men, munitions, and critical supplies. Yet amidst this logistical web, accounts began to emerge. Soldiers' diaries, local newspapers, and later anecdotal recollections of a train that defied reason, appearing on fog-laden nights, sometimes with glowing windows, sometimes entirely shadowed, yet always vanishing before daylight. Was it merely a trick of the mist and moonlight, or could there be something more? Some historians point to the chaotic rail operations during the battle, hastily constructed sidings, damaged tracks, and the frantic movement of supply trains. Could these elements, combined with the smoke and haze of ongoing skirmishes, have created the illusion of a ghostly train? And yet, witnesses described it in ways that defy ordinary explanation. A train heard moving along tracks long since removed, a whistle sounding in valleys where no steam engine could reach. Even the faint but unmistakable clatter of wheels on rails that no longer exist. The stories grew over the decades. Local residents recalled seeing the train on nights of intense fog, lights flickering as if carrying unseen passengers, only for it to disappear as quickly as it came. Rail enthusiasts and historians have debated whether these sightings could be linked to Confederate efforts to move gold or other valuables during the battle. Some suggest that it may have been a supply train hastily evacuated from advancing Union lines, whose tracks were later destroyed or dismantled, leaving only memory and rumor. Could it be that the phantom train is a lingering trace of those desperate efforts, a spectral echo of men and materials long vanished from the historical record? Speculative accounts venture even further. Could the train be connected to undiscovered caches of Confederate treasure hidden and never recovered, just as the Red Hill papers disappeared? From history, could it be a reminder of the human cost of the battle, a restless spirit bound to the rails where so many lives were lost? Researchers who have attempted to track the train's appearances note an odd pattern. It seems to manifest near old embankments and defunct sightings, places once critical to the Confederate supply lines and never in areas untouched by the conflict. The phantom train may not be a simple apparition, but a symbol of memory, grief, and unresolved history, manifesting where the past refuses to remain buried. Eyewitness reports, though anecdotal, carry a striking consistency. Soldiers' memoirs written years later, along with letters from civilians who lived near the tracks, describe the same eerie phenomena. A low rumble that rises and falls, a whistle that cuts through the fog, and the unmistakable impression of movement despite an absence of physical rails. Paranormal investigators and historians alike have speculated about environmental explanations. Sound reflections, temperature inversions, or optical illusions, but no natural cause has accounted for all elements reported. In the absence of definitive evidence, the train exists in the liminal space between documented history and legend, a reminder of how war can imprint itself not just on memory, but on the land itself. Standing today, near the remnants of Chickamauga's battlefields, the terrain appears serene, almost pastoral, yet the mind cannot fully erase the past. Old rail lines have been removed, trees have grown over former embankments, and yet the stories persist, as if the ground itself remembers the movement of iron and steam. Could it be that some histories resist documentation, existing only in whispered recollections, and the rare, fleeting witness of the unexplained, the phantom train, may never reveal its secrets? But its persistent presence invites reflection on what remains hidden just beyond the edge of perception. As the sun dips behind the ridges, casting long shadows over the battlefield, one cannot help but wonder, is the phantom train merely a trick of memory and imagination, or a lingering trace of history itself? Could it be carrying stories yet untold, secrets of supply lines, lost cargo, or even human sorrow? And most compelling of all, might it still appear for those who watch closely, reminding us that some mysteries of the Civil War are not bound by maps, archives, or time, but continue to roam the misty valleys of Chickamauga, waiting to be noticed.